All right, we're live.
Hey, look at that. We're live. We're on the internet. We're talking about movies. What a what a time to be alive. Talking about Gunman's Walk, a movie that I think a lot of people will have never heard of. It's a movie I would describe as a hidden gem,
Yeah,
forgotten and
criminally underrated.
underappreciated. Oh yeah, as the title suggests. I I'm really excited to talk about this movie. We'll let a couple people stroll in before we give any backstory about what we're talking about today. We can start with the person in chat who says, "Why didn't these hacks cover one battle after another?" Why don't you take that one, Hugh? Why
Well,
didn't we cover one battle after another?
see, I live in an area where it's a little difficult to get to movie theaters sometimes, which is an unfortunate circumstance to be in as someone who loves movies the way I do. So what I do is Jamie, who lives in a place where movies frequently like to premiere. He goes to see the movies and he tells me if it's worth my time to drive an hour to a movie theater to watch it. And he went to see that one. We did talk about it a little bit. He talked about it a little bit, and he told me don't bother. So I didn't. That's why I didn't cover one battle after another. Um,
Yes.
you
So
did speak a little bit about why you didn't,
we
because
talked a little bit
this has
about
come
it. I
up
really
quite a bit. This movie is like a very requested one from
Well,
chat.
here's the thing, Hugh. I am in the process of making a video on it. I tried my best to do a short, punchy video, but I'm just really not good at being brief. So it's turning into a bigger project. But I will be making a video on one battle after another. It'll take a little while because there are several projects going in the works. I also think this movie, One Battle After Another, that is, will be nominated for Best Picture. And so when that nomination drops, I think it will be a good time to drop a video about it, and that will give you plenty of enough time to make it. So we will be talking about One Battle After Another. If we're covering the Best Picture nominees next year, then he will have to see it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I told him not to bother because I think it. Well, I hate it. I think the fact that I hate it is probably the simplest explanation for it. But yeah, there'll be more to say about One Battle After Another in time. And to anyone who might be wondering, why don't you cover something more topical like Frankenstein? That is on the list. We will be doing that. But I want to talk about Gunman's Walk. Why? Because I discovered it through a Westerns only movie channel that I have through Roku, of all things, called Cinevault Westerns, where they play all Westerns all the time. And I throw it on every once in a while. Every now and then you see something decent. They get a lot of movies that are cheap to license, as you could imagine. So they don't tend to have a lot of the best westerns, but they have some pretty good ones. And I saw this little movie called Gunman's Walk, and I'm like, huh, what's this about? And I watched it, and I was like, holy shit, that's so good. And so
What
I
a great movie.
demanded that Hugh check it out as well. And
Mm.
last week, I told those of you who were here that you should check out Gunman's Walk before our stream today because we are going to be going through it in detail. We're going to be spoiling it, and it's an easy recommendation for me.
Oh, a
I
hundred
think it's a
percent.
very good little movie, and I think it's criminally underrated and underappreciated, as our title suggests, and as we've said already. I think more people deserve to know about this movie. Now, what you might find, if you didn't already struggle to find it, is that it's a little hard to find.
Yes.
Um,
It's a
it's
little hard to find, although one Google search brought me straight to a Russian website that hosts, much like a YouTube, where this movie is available to watch for free, for just it's just right there, right on the top, right on the front page. So until that gets shut down by the FBI, go ahead, go watch it. I mean, if you can't find it anywhere else,
yes, or
this is
you
a good
can
place.
just trust that it's good and go straight for the German Blu-ray from
Yep,
Amazon. That's how
that
I
works
own
too.
it now.
I
But
we managed to find it on DVD after several weeks of hunting around in the thrift stores around Virginia. So it does exist. It is out there. There was somebody's grandfather died with it in his possession. You could
Oh,
probably pick
Topaz
it up.
Dude says that it's available to rent on Amazon. That's good. I feel like when I first looked a few months ago, it wasn't. But I'm glad to hear that it's available for rent if you're into that sort of thing. So yeah, go away now, unless you're okay with the movie being spoiled, because it's time to talk about Gunman's Walk. Before we jump
I'd
in, I
also like to
want
point out
to
that chat, you're back. You're back.
chat. You're back.
You're finally
You're on
living
the
your
screen.
lives one quarter mile at a time. You're welcome for returning to the light.
You know what
Enjoy
I can't wait for is Fast 11. Can't
Fast
wait.
X Part Two.
I can't wait. I hope it's called Fast X Part 2 because that would be very funny. Contributing to the Fast and Furious franchise having the funniest naming conventions, if you could even call them a convention, of all time. There is no franchise with better titles across its franchise than the Fast franchise. So Fast X Part 2, you know,
Well,
can't wait.
yeah,
Vin Diesel is going to save Los Angeles
he's gonna he's gonna
or
save
something.
LA or something
He's going to
or
save
other
the
to
film
that
industry.
effect. It's the Fast is coming home if it can get green light for the budget that he wants. Um, because at the moment he's not having much luck. That
Well, that's because they spent like almost $400 million on the last one.
and it did not perform.
No, no. But I'm hey, it's gonna happen. I believe in him. I think he's gonna make it happen because he's just that guy. Before we jump into the movie, thank you very much. Small Hill for the super chat says, I saw this for the first time this week. What a great movie. I agree. I agree with you. Have you guys seen Shenandoah? Jimmy Stewart plays a family patriarch who tries to keep his family safe in Virginia during the Civil War. No, I have not seen that, but that sounds really interesting. Have you seen it?
No,
Shenandoah?
never seen it. I did see the chat that says we should cover the original 310 to Yuma, which
That I most certainly want to do
I
because
would
I
love to do
happened
that. I've never
to on a
seen it.
plane. I've never seen the original. I saw the remake again on a plane recently. I saw it originally back when it came out, and I like it, but I don't love it. And I'm very excited to see how different it is from the original, which I've only seen like a scene of that I caught briefly on this same Roku channel one time. So yes, 310 to Yuma definitely. I want to cover more westerns in general. That's just something I want to do because westerns used to be the thing. And there's so many great movies. They made so many goddamn movies. A lot of them are really good. So I want to cover more of those. If you're going to ask, oh, have you seen this one? I haven't seen. I've seen an embarrassing number of westerns.
And
That's why I
and by
wanted.
embarrassing, you mean low, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Embarrassingly low. Because if you've seen all of them, I wouldn't describe that as embarrassing. Westerns are great. I really like the ones I have seen, and I'd like to see more. So if you got more recommendations, please do let us know. Maybe we'll get around to them. 310 is definitely one I want to do. In no small part because it shares an actor with Gunman's Walk, that of Van Heflin, who
Great name.
plays the patriarch in Gunman's Walk, Lee Hackett. He's incredible in this movie. So I'm very excited to check out 310 to Yuma. Um, yeah, Shenandoah. I'll put that on the list as well. So, Hugh, why don't you start us off? What do you think of Gunman's Walk?
I love this movie. I
Yeah.
this you recommended this. It took a little while for us to get around to renting it when we did. Um, it's an emotional hit. It's really solid movie, and immediately we started scrambling around to try to find it on DVD because we just felt we kind of had to. It's a real hidden gem. Nobody I know has talked about it or like knows much about it. Even people who are very deep in, a lot of watch a lot of classic movies and know a lot about like obscure, for example, like obscure Italian cinema that had a big effect on the way people, make movies today. A lot of people don't know this one, I've found.
I'm going to interrupt you just to interject briefly that to give you a little taste of how many people have seen this movie. This doesn't even have enough critic reviews to have a critic score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, the Wikipedia page for this is
To give
like
you an idea. First,
comically terse. Yeah. In
you
fact,
know
I
what's really
wanted to
funny?
read
Yes, I think
the
I know where you're going with this.
reception section of the Wikipedia page, right? Because the production notes is 3 paragraphs, and I'm using the term paragraph very loosely. It's like more a lot like 5 or 6 sentences. The reception section on Wikipedia simply says this, and I quote: "The Los Angeles Times said it was movie making at its best."
End quote.
End quote.
I'll add on to that. The next section following reception, the next, subheader in Wikipedia says legacy. Oh, so what's the legacy of this movie? Quentin Tarantino, of course, Quentin Tarantino, right? Because who else would have seen this movie? Quentin Tarantino later said the film was an inspiration for Tanner, the fictitious movie starring Rick Dalton in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That's it.
That
That's its
that's
legacy.
its legacy.
But not if
Tarantino likes it. That's the
not
legacy.
if we have anything to say about it. Anyway, continue, Hugh.
Oh, that's pretty much all I got. It's a really great movie, a real hidden gem. I mean, it's a beautiful looking piece of cinema. It's got some great performances. It's got a fun song that is very catchy. It's used as both diegetic music and as the score in a lot of places.
What's the elevator pitch for the story to those who have not seen it and who are not yet convinced they should go check it out?
It's interesting because there's like a lot of the summary of the log line that you get from a lot of people who have seen the movie is that it's about a father who has to stop his murderous son before things get too far. But I would say that that's not really accurate. It's more like, because it doesn't focus on that journey as much as you might expect from that log line. It's more about like a father who, how would I say this? A father who's not willing to grow with the times, seeing his children take on different aspects of himself, and he has to sort of come to terms with that in himself. So it's a little like thematically, it's kind of complex, and I think that's one of the things that adds to it. Adds a lot to it. But simply put, it's really just about two brothers. It's just it's just called
Just
Two
called
Brothers.
Two Brothers.
It's just called Two Brothers. Um, it's really about two brothers. One who is more of like the soulful new western type of guy who doesn't see a point in the violence and um the
Well, don't hurt
violent.
yourself, Hugh.
Hmm? I know, man. It's
Don't
like
hurt yourself.
it's about a brother who's like kind of a loose cannon, and
Oh yeah,
the rest of the
to put it
family
mildly.
has to deal with it, and
Yeah, I
yeah,
would I would describe it. It's a lot like a Shakespearean tragedy,
yeah,
set in the rapidly civilizing American West. One of the things I like so much about this movie is that we have the patriarch of the family, played by Van Heflin. He's the guy who helped tame the frontier. He is a legend in this area. He's the whole reason. I mean, not him solely, but he's the image of this. He's the reason there's a town and a civilization here at all, right? Because he helped, turn this landscape into, European civilization. He fought against like the warring Sioux tribes to claim this land and all that sort of stuff. He built this town essentially and sort of like fashioned civilization out of it. Now, things are rapidly civilizing. The town is becoming more wealthy, but it's also becoming less rugged,
yeah. It's
right?
your
It's
classic like
becoming
end of the frontier kind of western story.
yes, exactly. And so he's raising two sons. One of them is rather obsessively and pathologically obsessed with the surface level, image of what it means to be a rugged pioneer man, and another son who's a bit more sensitive and effeminate and sort of vibes with the changing times, right? And the changing times, include people who don't like it that normal people are just wearing guns in town. They want to outlaw that, right? They just they believe the law should have guns and that normal people shouldn't carry guns. But Lee Hackett and his sons, they're the men who built this town, right? So like they're gonna wear a gun. They're gonna be what real men are. Like so, there's a lot of tension around the pioneer spirit versus like the civilized American spirit, and like it's got it's a little similar to No Country for Old Men in that it's like a
Yeah,
changing of an era, right? And basically, his son Ed Hackett is kind of a psychopath, right? but no one's really like he, especially the dad, is like the last person willing to fully reckon with just how hot-headed and dangerous he is, because he sees a lot of himself in him, and he sees a lot of what he believes men should be in him. But what he doesn't really fully understand is that Ed is like obsessed with it for all obsessed with being a man on the surface for all the wrong reasons, essentially, and like doesn't understand like the
Well,
sort of
he's trying to
moral ethos
outshine his
behind it.
father, right? Like,
Yes,
and
that's a big part of it.
he grows up with the stories of his father having, gunned down, however many Indians in the wars of territory, and having, boldly faced down these violent threats and tamed the frontier. And he wants to live up to that, but he's not adapting to the fact that that's not how his world is anymore. And so it's kind
Yeah.
of examining how that looks to a rapidly civilizing and different looking West, right? Like
Yeah.
less of the pioneer spirit, more of the just general townsfolk kind of thing. And
Hmm.
it's a really fascinating it's a really fascinating and really fun exploration of what
I,
the American spirit is and means, especially or did at this time, right?
and
It's
it's complicated too.
yeah,
It doesn't really, it's not super easy to describe, as if like the movie isn't especially preachy, I would say. It deals with some pretty heavy themes, but it's not like, this is what it means to be a man now. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Because a lot of the things that Lee Hackett says are true and correct. Like there's a lot of people saying things that are half true that you can kind of understand everyone's perspective. It's just a really fascinating character study. I think that's one of the things I like about it so much. All the characters feel very well realized. The dialogue is really strong, really punchy. There's a lot of moments where someone says something like, "Oh God, Jesus!" Like the venom with which they say certain things. And
yeah,
the acting I think is incredible. Obviously, Van Heflin is very good in the movie, but I think the real standout performance is Tab Hunter as Ed Hackett, the hot-headed, borderline psychopathic son. He's incredible in this movie. Oh, he's so good. I love his
yeah,
performance. And it's a very well shot movie. The music is great. It's well directed. It's, simple. Oh, it's there are westerns that are flashier than this, I suppose you could say. But there's a lot of great shots. There's a lot of great cinematography. Things are well staged, well directed, and so yeah, it's an easy recommendation for me. I really like it. And we'll talk about it in depth now, but that's the pitch. It's a Shakespearean tragedy in the West that is transitioning from the early pioneer days to a more civilized and softer civilization, and what that means for the person who uh like is living, at the crossroads between those two worlds. So,
yeah. And Tab Hunter, another interesting guy, just in general. He had a very long and very successful career, especially in the late '50s and through the '60s. Um, but this is the first time that I had ever encountered him in anything, actually, because
yeah.
I haven't seen any of these others that he was in. Not even some of the classics like "Damn Yankees," right? So this is, he's kind of this is kind of the year where his career takes off, because "Damn Yankees" I think was the one where he was not, like, maybe not nominated, but it was nominated for an Academy Award. It was, a big musical thing, and so he kind of he has that exact sense of like a young star on the rise in this movie.
Yes.
He really kind of
Yes, he
commands
does.
the scenes with his charisma. He's pretty great.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about this movie because it's just so it feels so rich to me, like there's just so much going on. Um so yeah, go see it if you haven't already. I would recommend. I think it's the kind of thing that is best watched without us spoiling it, obviously. But, if you were to stick around for the conversation, I still think you would enjoy it afterwards. So watch Gunman's Walk. It's good.
Yes, it is. All right, we'll get to get into it. And yeah, so as Topaz Dude points out, Tab Hunter is where the Tarantino love comes from. Rick Dalton in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is inspired by him and other actors like him, respectable careers that could never make it to the A League of actors. Yeah, that sounds about right, honestly. Um, he had a very long career. And, like, he made almost 40 movies, so very prolific as well. But like nothing apart from Damn Yankees, which is kind of a lesser known movie musical from the time. It's not one of the ones that is regularly cited. So yeah. Matthew Leach says, "What do you think is the last good Western movie?" So before we get started on that, like, yeah,
Oh, um,
it depends. I guess it kind of depends. I thought Hell or High Water was a pretty good neo Western, but neo Western doesn't count.
what do we? Yeah, okay. What do we? Neo Western. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, I'm
um,
thinking sort of like if I'm talking neo Western, I'm thinking like themes that that are present in Western movies, but that don't involve cowboys and gunmen and that kind of thing.
I did think Hell or High Water was pretty good. Um, and that was what 2016. So can you think of a later one? Um,
Uh, well, not really.
recent Western movies. Eddington. I'm just kidding. I didn't see that. It didn't look very good.
Ari Aster's Eddington, yes, Beau is Afraid, my favorite Western.
I'm just looking at a list right now, and it's not looking too good. I did see Power of the Dog, and I really did not like it. So
We
it's kind of proving the
also did
point.
not we did not care for Bone Tomahawk either. Um,
I mean, that's better. It's better than Power of the Dog, that's for sure.
yeah,
I kind of hated that movie.
Django maybe.
It's-
Does that
well, that
count?
would have been that would have been before Hell or High Water,
That's
but
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
I do like Django. There's a movie TM for sure.
Yep.
Capital M movie.
Chris Pratt's Magnificent Seven. I'm gonna say is a big no. Um, it's funny because I searched recent Western movies and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly still comes up. Um,
Yeah, maybe Hell or High Water. We'll go with that for now. It's a fine enough answer for the last pretty good Western movie.
yeah. Topaz Dude saying Wind River, if that counts too, because that's the next one that Taylor Sheridan made. I would
I
say
didn't I didn't like Wind River, if I'm being honest with you.
yeah, Wind River is
It,
fine.
yeah,
It's not quite as it's nowhere near as good as Hell or High Water. I don't know what I'm saying. It's
no,
no it's nowhere near
no,
as good.
certainly not. The last like absolutely excellent westerns,
Probably.
depending on how you define a western. For me, it's like No Country and There Will Be Blood. Depending on
Yeah, There Will Be
exactly
Blood.
how you define what a western is. But
Unforgiven is also really
yeah,
good.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The last like masterpiece ones. Anyway, neo western, The Matrix, if the simulation was set in the mid 19th century.
So Westworld,
Yeah.
basically. The Yul Brynner Westwood, obviously, not the.
Oh, obviously, of
Oh
course.
yeah,
So, Gunman's Walk opens with two brothers, it's just called Two Brothers.
it's called Two
Uh,
Brothers.
that Ed and Davy Hackett. They're riding along. They've been riding for 5 miles, and Davy's like trying to talk to him. Davy's trying to talk to Ed, and Ed's not responding. Right? Ed's the kind of loose cannon one, and Davy is like trying to talk to him, and so he decides, if he's just gonna ignore me, I'll play a fun prank on him, and so he shouts really suddenly out of nowhere to startle uh, Ed's horse, and Ed gets really pissed off at him, and he runs back. He's like, "Hey, you pull that kind of stunt again, I swear to God." And he's like, "I just wanted to make sure you could still talk." And so they already it sets up very quickly the sort of like rivalry they have, the way they bicker with each other and argue and that sort of stuff. And as this is playing, they're whistling the main sort of central tune of the movie, which was written for the movie, and it's very, very, very catchy. I think it's just called "I'm a Runaway." Like Hugh mentioned earlier, like they whistle it a couple of times, and then later Ed will be singing it in a saloon, and it also factors its way into the score in a lot of really meaningful ways, especially at the very, very end. It's probably one of my favorite little musical moments in the entire movie. We'll get to that eventually. Very strong use of music throughout, I would
Yeah.
say. I think the music does a really good job of, in the beginning, feeling very like, oh, look at this. We're the happy family out on the frontier, and look at that, look at beautiful landscapes and horses, and isn't this nice?
It's a
And then
nice
by the end, it's
jaunty
like,
tune,
oh, yeah.
And then
And
but
by
it's got the like it can become quite harrowing by the end too. Like yeah, very
Oh
very
yeah.
yeah.
And the music reflects that. The music, because this is a tragedy, right? Through and through. And I think the music does a really good job of taking you on that arc all the way through while reusing a lot of the same themes and stuff like that. So I'm very impressed with that aspect. Quick shout out to Metal Maniac says, "Hey guys, I'm alive. Surgery went well. God bless." Congrats, dude. I'm very, very
Congratulations.
glad to hear that.
Yes, very
Very, very
much.
glad to hear that.
Glad to have you back
Indeed.
with us to talk about this one too.
Oh yeah.
Also, Topaz Dude says, remember when people said Logan was a Western? Yeah, well, you remember also when people said El Camino was a Western because he has a shootout at the end? The Breaking
All it
Bad movie?
takes.
It's all it takes. At least Logan was directed by the guy who did 310 to Yuma, so you can kind of see sort of where they're coming from, I guess. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
policing the exact boundaries of genres is not something I'm especially keen on doing, but it is kind of like, oh, when Ari Aster says that, like, oh, this movie's kind of like a Western, it's like, okay, only in the most surface level details, I guess, but sure, like whatever. I people like to do that a lot. They like to go like, "Oh, this is like a Western." It's like, "Why?" Because it takes place in the American West. It's like, "That's it?" Okay. Or there's like a conflict between a sheriff or something. It's like, there are a lot of like genre markers that don't seem to be there. When people are calling certain movies Westerns, like is Breaking Bad a Western?
It's a
I
cops
don't
and
know.
robbers story, like
Yeah.
in that sense, I
So like
suppose.
kind of I don't know. It's all kind of fuzzy along the edges there. Suppose it really doesn't matter whether it's a Western or not. T2 is a Western. Yeah, see, this is what I mean. This is what happens.
Uh,
Looking forward to you guys getting back to Disney. That is certainly on plan as well. What's the next movie we have to cover?
Sword and the Stone.
Sword in the Sun. Oh, yeah, we're getting into the ones that I haven't seen before, so that's pretty exciting.
I can't remember if I've seen that one or not, so that'll be an interesting one.
Actually, hold on. Entertain the fine people for 1 second. Be right back.
Maybe the real Western was the friends we made along the way. Hey, that sometimes that's just how it works out. Fast and Furious is a Western, you know? You could make that argument for sure. Instead of horses and six shooters, they've got family and Hondas. So Sword and Stone is a Western. Yeah, lots of them. Old Henry, Stephen Lynn Music. Old Henry, I've never heard of that one. So maybe we'll have to check that out at some point too. We were talking about wanting to cover more westerns in on this stream because we both have kind of become big fans of them in recent years. Just something charming about having them to fall back on. Georgius, I do plan on reading The Sword and the Stone as well. Yeah, I don't worry, I got you covered. We will watch and read, and we come to the discussion. Uh,
Okay, I'm back.
all right, perfect.
So yes, they get Davy, shouts and to like get his brother's horse startled, so like to try to like again like, hey, come on, we've been riding for 5 miles and you won't talk to me, come on. And then he starts whistling at him. He's like, well, if that's your idea of talking, then
Yeah, I love the sort of sibling annoying of each other,
yes,
the traditional annoyances where
yes,
Ed is starting off by whistling and ignoring him, so Davy shouts and startles the horse, and so when Ed is paying attention to him,
hmm
Davy just immediately switches back to whistling and ignoring his brother.
yeah. It's great. I really do believe them as brothers in this movie, despite the fact that they don't really look anything like each other, which is actually kind of works for the movie actually that they don't look too much alike because we'll get to it, but that it actually kind of works with the theme. But they act like it, and I think they do a really good job of making that believable. So while they're sort of arguing and bickering with each other, and Davy says like, "Hey, remember?" Like last year, there was that mare. It was like a beautiful white mare that was, roaming through their lands, and Davy tried to catch it, with a rope and everything, but he missed. And he's just like, I can't believe I missed that. And Ed's like, oh, you make it sound like that's the first time you've missed. And there's going to be a lot of that in this
Yes.
movie, where they're making fun of Davy for being
Kind of a shit
shitty.
cowboy, yeah.
Yeah, he's not a very good cowboy. And basically, he's like, Ed's bragging about how good he is in comparison, and he's like, oh, well, you're not as good as Lee. Later, we'll learn that Lee is their father. And this really sets Ed off, right? He does not like that. And that will become clear as the movie goes on, but this is the first instance of it, right? Ed does not like to be compared to his father unless it's to say that he's better than him.
Yeah.
He's obsessed, absolutely obsessed with being better than his dad, right? And so when Davey laughs at him for suggesting that he's actually he has better aim, he's a better throw than his father, he gets really pissed off and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll show you." And then he goes riding off on his horse and he jumps over this big ravine and Davey can't follow him because he's just not as confident and competent on his horse, right? And he's like, that'll show you. See, I'm the best.
Yeah.
I'm the best. Don't you forget it, which is essentially his defining character trait, is that he's obsessed with being the best. And so he loses his brother. And so he goes all the way into town to a little trading post, right? And Ed sees there a beautiful young woman um, who we will later learn is half French and half Sioux, though he doesn't know that yet.
Yeah.
And her name is Clee.
Well, he figures
Uh,
it out pretty quickly because he says his pickup line is if they make him like you over there, I might have to join the tribe.
yes, yes, exactly. So he sees her, Ed does, and is like, "Oh, I want that one," because that's his approach to women in general. So he starts trying to talk to her, and he's being rather forceful in coming on to her, and she's trying to like be polite and ignore his advances, but it's not really working. So they go into the little trading post, and Davy has shown up now, and Davy's talking to the guy, and he's like, "Hey, listen, my dad and I, we need a bunch of hands to help us with
With a
driving
horse
horses from
drive.
one, yeah, with a horse drive, and so we need as many hands as we can get because we got a lot of them." And he's like, and while that's happening, Ed is still coming on to the woman. He won't let up. He's being very forceful, right? And she is not happy about it. And yeah, what happened to I had a little transcript of the dialogue. Can't find it. You have that pulled up?
No, I don't. I do not have a transcript of it. I have the movie, but
There's a specific line that he says that kind of reveals like that that Ed is like he really wants to have sex with this woman, but he kind of treats her with contempt for being a half breed. I was trying to remember exactly how he phrases it. If you have that, let me know because it's interesting.
yeah.
Um,
Let me see. I can probably get that for you.
it's hard to find things like the script and the transcript for this movie, which is frustrating because it's just hard to find and no one really seems to know about it. But anyway, he is demonstrating his character already, right? And he's like, he's being a little douchebag about it. And so Davy doesn't like that. And so Davy goes out there to talk with her and be like, "Hey, I'm sorry about my brother. Don't worry about him." And he's like, I know who you are. You're Lee Hackett's son. I could tell because you're wearing his trademark." And he says, "What's that?" It's like a gun, right? So already we established that like around these parts, most people don't carry guns as much anymore, except for the Hacketts, right? And we'll see why in a bit. Do you have the line?
I do have the line. I mean, it's not particularly complicated. So what happens is he's being kind of smarmy, insinuating that he is planning on fucking a good bit when they get to Jackson City at the end of the horse drive. And
Yeah.
he starts asking her questions. Like he's like, "Clee, that's a real pretty name. What does it mean in Sioux?" He says, "It's not Sue, and it isn't Honey either, because he's been calling her Honey." And
Hmm.
she goes to leave the room, and he goes to follow her. So Davy pulls him to the side. He goes, "Hey, how come you gotta talk to her like that and treat her like?" He says, "What, like a half breed? Why not?"
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it.
He's
He's just
he's not very nice, but he gets that in particular from his dad, as we'll see in a bit. So Davy is already trying to apologize for his brother, and also sort of like what the main theme running through everything for Davy is that like he is obviously, he has a tense relationship with his father because his father wants him to be more like Ed, who is at least on the surface more like him. He knows how to shoot a gun, he knows how to ride a horse, he's exceptional at those things. He's like a rough talker, and he's confident, and he's kind of abrasive, and all the things like that his father thinks a man ought to be. Right? He's very independently minded and everything like that. Whereas Davy takes after his mother. Now, one of the most interesting things I think about this movie in terms of like the richness of the characters and the themes and all that is that their mother isn't in their life, right? Like it's rarely ever brought up in the movie, but it kind of hangs over everything.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like the mom is just not around, and Davy takes after her, right? And in some ways, he's like trying to be like the feminine influence in their home, and they kind of hate him for it, right? Like one of the things that we'll see, actually, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna jump around a little
that's
bit
fine.
because I
I would
think
prefer to
certain
do that.
certain things are more interesting in relation to what comes later, right? So when they're eventually introduced to Lee Hackett, right? They come home to their big. I think this is Wyoming, right? Is that what they are? I know it's
Yeah,
shot in Arizona,
somewhere
but I think.
I think
Oh
it's
yeah, because they mentioned Jackson Hole, so it's definitely Wyoming, right? So they have a giant, and I mean absolutely massive ranch in Wyoming. There's a great little montage of them riding from the entrance, the property line to the ranch, and like over several
it's
dissolves, it finally.
beautiful.
Oh
And yeah,
yeah, and it takes them forever to finally get to the house, which is just like an indication of how massive this property is, right? And he's essentially the richest man in Wyoming for all intents and purposes, right? Because he got here first, and he, tamed the land himself and all that. So he's doing very well for himself. He has a giant ranch, he has many, workers and everything like that, tons of horses and cattle, all that sort of fun stuff. So the two boys arrive at the ranch, right? And Lee is talking to a guy roughly his age. He's trying to convince him, "Oh, come on this horse run with us." And he's like, I'm a little too old for that. Don't you think?" He's like, "Oh, come on, it's fun." He's like, it's like
you don't have a couple of
like
sons like that to keep up with.
it's like, well, it doesn't seem like you want to keep up with them. It seems like you always have to be ahead of them, huh? And that guy will often be voicing lines of like criticism against Lee for how he's raised his children. But that's a running theme for Lee. So Lee's a really complicated character, right? Because Lee, he doesn't have his wife anymore. Presumably, she died when Davy was very young or in childbirth or something, because Davy barely remembers her. We'll get to that later. But he hasn't had a wife or any sort of feminine influence in his life for many years now, right? And so he hasn't really grown up, right? He's a very impressive, very competent man. He's very generous, and he's beloved, and he's been very successful in his life. But he still wants to be one of the boys, right? So much so that he doesn't let his sons call him dad or sir, right? He kind of insists on being one of the guys. He's still going on these, he's still, sleeping rough out in the wilderness as they go on these long, kind of arduous horse drives and all that sort of stuff. He's not really passing the torch to his children so much as he kind of just wants to be one of the boys while simultaneously insisting that they do everything he says.
Yeah,
Right? And that they sit and listen dutifully as he tries to teach them life lessons, right? So he's kind of complicated in that regard. He like he's kind of torn
he
between wanting
almost
to be
treats
a
them
father.
like he's like their commander in the army, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like a like a friendly sort of affection rather than a fatherly. a fatherly kind of love. It's very
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So they come home, and one of the first things that happens is they got off their horses, and the guy that was with Lee offers to take Ed's horse and take care of him and put him up in the stable for him, wash up and all that sort of stuff, feed him. And Ed says like, "Yeah, you got it, thanks, man." And Lee pulls him aside, and he's like, "What was that?" It's like, don't let a man do favors for you like that. You should be doing that yourself. And it's like, well, I didn't ask him to do it. He just offered. It's like, well, I don't care if he offered. You shouldn't let people do favors that you aren't willing to pay back two or three fold. He's like, what? Am I supposed to wash up two or three of his horses? Like, that's not what I mean. Don't let people do favors for you that you should be doing yourself. And this is a really important line. He says, if a man starts doing things for you, things you should be doing yourself, he's going to start to thinking that he's better than you. And the Hacketts don't do that, right? That will become very important later because Ed hates it anytime his dad does anything for him. He wants to be his own man. He wants to be better than his dad. He doesn't like it when his dad is bailing him out of trouble. Like Lee expects him to be happy about it, right? That like I just saved your ass. You're about to be thrown in jail later in the movie. But he doesn't want anything done for him, especially by him. Why? Because he's been ingrained with this rather extreme vision of self-sufficiency and individualism that like, oh, don't let people do favors for you. If people do for you what you can do yourself enough, they're going to think they're better than you, right? And he cannot stand the idea that his
Yeah.
dad thinks he's better than him, right? And so he takes that lesson to heart in the worst way, right? In the worst way possible. But that's a big theme running through the movie about like, letting other people help you and to what extent you should be self-reliant, because it's easy to understand why Lee thinks that self-reliance is important. He was a frontier man, right? And he, raised two boys and all that sort of stuff without the help of a wife who presumably died. It's never really said explicitly. So he's been doing everything himself, and he seems like a decent guy at heart, right? But he's not the best father.
Well, and
And the
Topaz
fruits of
points
that
out a
become
really
clear.
interesting fact, right? Is that like when Lee was Ed's age, he was very much, you have to imagine, like Ed, right? It's just that there was a more acceptable outlet for that kind of behavior,
Kind
and
of. I actually sort of. I don't think Lee quite hated his dad in the
no,
same way,
probably
or was
not.
like,
I don't think that
but
there
he
was
was
that
certainly,
shadow hanging over him, but it is like
yeah.
the sort of lust for adventure and the goal to prove yourself when you're on the open frontier and you're the guy
Hmm.
who's like claiming and settling the territory and setting it up and defending it, right? Like there is a socially acceptable outlet for that sort of aggression and behavior that Ed shows later on, right? Where he's like,
It's more necessary and advantageous in certain situations.
yeah,
Yeah, certain environments.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So like you can see that there is some level of like where like definitely like he says later to Davy, right, where he's like, I wish you were more like your brother because I understand how I understand, you, it's just I'm not, I don't mean that I wish you were more like Ed, I just don't, I don't know how to relate to you as well. It's like, yeah, because
Yeah.
he and when he's defending Ed in the sheriff's office, and he's just like, oh, come on, back when we were young, we used to do stuff like that all the time, and nobody ever put us in jail. That was just like, remember that 4th of July where we partied straight through the 5th, 6th, and the 7th. And we were out there having a ball, and the sheriff has to keep telling him, it's like, that was 20 years ago. It's not the same. He's like, yeah, but you can understand it. We get it. We understand where he's coming from. He's sort of hung up on his own image of what like being a young man should be, and that stops him from recognizing the more psychopathic tendencies that have worked their way into Ed's behavior. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But what's interesting about the scene you just mentioned when he's talking to the sheriff, and the sheriff's like, "But that was 20 years ago, man. Times have changed." And he's like, "Times are only changed because people gotten soft." And it's like, yeah, he's kind of right. Like that's what I really like about this movie is that like everyone's kind of right, you know? Like it feels like we're really looking at things in a very unbiased way, right? Because the sheriff is right that like, listen, times have changed and you need to adapt to the times. And he's like, yeah, but also like things are getting soft, right? Like so earlier in the movie, he's talking with Davy and he's like, "Hey, Davy, you left your gun at home when you went out on that job." He's like, "Oh, I must have forgotten it." And he's like, "You forgot it, huh?" He's like, "Okay, maybe I didn't forget it. Maybe I just didn't wear it. No one else is wearing them." And he's like, "Yeah, but I don't give a shit what other people." He doesn't talk like that, but he's just like, "I don't care what other people are doing. Like we wear them. We wear them because that's what
Because we were
men
here
do.
first. Yeah, we were here
We're
first,
here
and they
first.
should
That's
know
what a
that.
man ought to do." Exactly. And so who cares if they don't wear guns? You ought to, right? And he's like, can you even still shoot? And Davey's like, yeah, I can shoot. Like, I mean, I just don't see the point in wearing it. I can still shoot. And he's like, oh yeah, prove it. And so first, Lee demonstrates that he's quite a fine shot with his pistol, and then Davey tries to do the same thing, and he is not. He misses several times over, and so they get to this great little scene where Lee like throws a couple bottles in the air to see if he can hit them, and he doesn't. And he's like trying to teach him a little bit, but he's not the best coach necessarily. It's just kind of like a look at me, see how I do it. That's how you do it. Right? He's maybe
Yeah.
not the best instructor, but he's like, "Come on, Davey, like you ought to know how to do these things." And Davey's like, "Yeah, well,
Yeah, what's the
times have
point?
changed. I don't
He
have
said
to
at one point,
anymore.
he
What's
says,
the
like, I
point?"
don't see what the point is because I can shoot well enough to put a horse out of its misery, right? Like, I can shoot well enough to put a horse out of its misery or anything like that. And Ed has come down and he goes, yeah, if you're standing close enough to it, which
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
funny jab, but like also he's kind of right. Like, he's not he's, he knows where to point he knows the basics of like you point the barrel that way and you shoot, right? But he's
Yeah.
not really concerned with he doesn't he's not concerned with outdoing his dad. I think probably because he's sort of sensing that like that's not something that's valued by the world he's growing up in anymore, right? Like
Yeah.
and Ed is clinging to the idea that like he needs to reflect, or exceed the expectations of being Lee Hackett's son, to the point where like
Yes.
he'll say by the end in the final confrontation that he wants to be more famous than Lee Hackett ever was, right?
Yeah.
They'll know me but more than him. And
What I what I
yeah,
quite like is that both his sons are um they have issues in the opposite extremes, right?
yeah,
Because Davy is kind of a pushover and he's not very competent, really. He's not very confident in himself. And he's doing the opposite of Ed in some ways. He's like trying to distance himself from his father, right? So they have this dad who is very sort of off balance and only really giving like half of what, an upbringing should be, right? Because he himself isn't really being like counterbalanced by the sort of feminine hand, I think you could say. And so Davey is kind of like rejecting that. He doesn't want to wear a gun. He doesn't really want to be seen as Lee Hackett's son. He thinks that name is just kind of like a burden on him because everyone sees them as behind the times and old fashioned and reckless and whatever else. And especially his brother, he's always trying to apologize for him. You can tell it bothers him when everyone just knows he's Hackett, like Lee Hackett's son, always, right? So he's kind of rejecting his family and the good things about his dad as well. Whereas Ed is obsessed with like half of his dad's personality to like a pathological degree. Davy is kind of like moving in the opposite direction in a way that's not especially good either because he doesn't stand up for himself. That's a big thing for him. So Davy has a smaller arc than Ed does and then Lee does, but Davy has to sort of learn to stand up for himself in the movie. But that's a big part of like him sort of real, like, I don't know. I think that's really interesting that he has two sons that kind of go in two extremes, that like one of them has to learn their lesson and be a bit stronger of a man, and the other one kind of fails to learn his lesson to come back from that sort of pathological view of what a man is, and so he pays the ultimate price for it. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
like there are several scenes in the movie where Davy tries to stand up to his dad kind of midway through the movie, and he's such a little pussy about it. It's really funny, actually. There's a great scene where he's like talking back to his dad, and his dad's like, "What'd you just say to me?" He's like, "I think I'm gonna turn in for the night. Okay, but goodbye." And then he like closes the door. It's just
Well,
like,
he does kind of get a like he does do that. It is a little bit timid, right? But he does get a good verbal like jab at him before he disappears. I do like that
yeah,
line,
he,
right? Where he's like, "Hey
yeah,
Lee,
it's a
what do
good
you
line.
know? Without your boots on, you're not even as tall as I am." And he just like backs off and closes the
And he's like,
door real
"What'd you
quick.
say?" And he's like, I'm gonna go. Okay, bye."
Yeah.
Like that's almost verbatim what he says. It's really funny. I think I'm gonna turn in for the night. Good night. You know, but like at the beginning of the movie, it's basically he will apologize for his brother to Klee, for example, but he won't really stand up to him. He's like, sometimes I just want to punch him in the face. And Clee's like, well, I think you'd be right to. And he's like, the trouble is that he hits back and he hits a lot harder than I do. And so he has a sort of timid unwillingness to stand up for himself and what he thinks. He just kind of is always kind of apologizing for them and just kind of wants to do whatever the opposite of his dad does, whether it's the right thing to do or not. Because his dad isn't like all bad, obviously. So it's like he kind of has to learn a little bit of a lesson as well. But yeah, so Lee is showing Davy like, come on, like you're very rusty. You're not very good with your gun at all, and he's trying to tell him that like that is important, and it's like, yeah, that is, especially for the kind of work he's in,
For the kind of
and you
work
know,
and for where they live, as several people in the chat have now pointed out, right? Like if you live on an estate that big that's that far from town, it's
hmm.
necessary, like
Oh yeah,
as unlikely as it might be nowadays in this time, right? It's necessary to be able to defend it yourself because the
oh yeah,
sheriff's not going to be able to get out there in time, right?
yeah. So
So,
that's what I mean about like everyone's kind of half right.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, because Davy obviously looks at Ed and he looks at Lee and sees that there's a problem there, but he's kind of blind to the fact that he's kind of gone too far in the other extreme that he is kind of like not what he needs to be as a man as well. The movie has, I would say, a rather kind of interesting and nuanced vision of what being a man is because I think Lee is a really strong character and I think he like wants to be a good dad, but like there's certain things that he just I think a big part of it is the fact that his like that these boys didn't have a mother and he didn't have a wife for a lot of his life. You know what I mean? Like he just doesn't he hasn't been sort of himself like tempered and civilized by that at all, right? A big part of that is accepting help from people, right? So there's a scene later where Davy tries to offer to like help him take his boots off, you know, because his dad's getting up there in age and he's tired and all that stuff. And he offers to help him, and he's like, "I could do it. You think I can't do it?" And it's like, what's wrong with helping your dad, right?
Yeah,
I'm just trying to
he
help
says
him.
this exactly that basically. It's like
Yeah.
can a son offer to help his own father? It's like if I want your help, I'll ask for it. It's like
Hmm.
yeah, but okay, like
You just can't accept help from people, right? And
yeah,
Topaz, dude, you mentioned earlier that like they have no concept of helping someone out of the goodness of their heart. I wouldn't quite go that far, but they do. It's an obsession with self-reliance and
yeah,
self-sufficiency. So they don't want to accept help from people. But he Lee makes it quite clear throughout the movie that he's actually fairly generous to people, you know, and he's like he's not like he wouldn't help someone if they needed it. He just doesn't want to accept help. He's like help is for other lesser people to receive. Me, I don't accept help because I don't need it.
yeah. The
Like
Hackett
if
never accepts a favor unless he's willing to pay it back threefold. Is
yeah.
his exact words, right? And so
Yeah,
he
there's a kind of superiority that comes from that, but he certainly is willing to help people and do things for people. It's just a matter of whether he lets anyone do anything for him,
yeah,
which is, you know, interesting.
yeah.
Um But yeah, so the scene where they're shooting the gun, and then eventually Ed comes along and he makes fun of Davy, where he's like, "Yeah, you could shoot a horse
If you're
to put it out of
standing
its
close
misery if you're
enough to it,
standing close enough." And then he's like,
which
"Oh,
is a
come on,
great
Ed, let's."
punchy little line.
Yeah, there's a lot of great punchy little lines, but Lee is like, "All right, come on, Ed, show him how it's done." And he like throws two bottles up in the air, one after the other, and he tells Ed that you have to shoot the second one first, right? So I would throw one, and then two. You have to shoot the second one before you shoot the first one, and then Ed does it, and Lee's like, "Oh, very, very good." And he's like, "I'd like to see you do better." And he's like, "No, you know what? I don't think I could."
He
Like,
says, "Do you think you could do better?"
right,
And he said,
sorry, yeah,
"Yeah," and like kind of trying to be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, you think I'm better than you at that?" And he goes, "No, I don't think I could." Now, but if that had been a man over there, because he has to throw in the qualifier of
yeah,
like, well, if it was a charging Indian party, I absolutely would have outshot you then. But like he can't what the Topaz dude was saying is like Lee is for such a tough guy persona, Lee is so afraid of the changing times and of the becoming irrelevant in a way, right? That he has to keep up and keep ahead, not even keep up, but keep ahead of his son, who is remarkably talented in all of the things
oh yeah.
that he.
He's even a pretty good piano player, as it
Yeah, he
turns out.
is, and singer.
Yeah,
Wow. This guy could be a pop star in the 1950s.
yeah,
He could put out an album.
yeah. Really quick, Topaz Dude mentions, here's a question. Could you make a case Davey is the most secure man throughout the movie? Ed has major daddy issues. Lee is internally scared of being old. Yeah, except that Davey also has the issue of like, if Ed is learning the wrong lessons from who his father is, taking them in the extreme and like removing them from their context, right? Like that we get at the very, very end. They talk about, like, oh, if you just think all I was a guy who killed a bunch of people, then you had the wrong man for the father. Then you had the wrong man as a father, right? So it's like it's not just about killing people, it's about why and in what context. Like he's learned only the surface level lessons from his dad, whereas Davy, because he sees what Ed is kind of doing the opposite, and that makes him a little bit of a pussy. He has less issues than his brother, that's for sure. But he seems like he's just unwilling to be
I think
like his father at all.
by the end of his arc, you could definitely say like Davy becomes the most secure man at that
Yes.
point, right? Because eventually Ed is going to allow his inferiority complex to get him killed, right? And
Yes.
Lee is going to see the consequence of his fear in like the worst possible way you could imagine as a father, right? Having to, spoiler, having to shoot your own son to stop
Yes.
him from killing other people. But Davy stands up to his father and his brother and kind of takes what he wants,
Hmm.
by the end
At
of
the
it.
by the very end, yes.
And he's the first to come around on the arc, right? So like he
Yeah.
gets the girl and he decides what he's gonna do. Like he's willing to go out and be like, yeah, because basically before Lee rides out to hunt Ed down, he tells Davy like, fine, you can go live with the half Indian girl if you want, that's fine, but if you ever come by my ranch, I'm gonna
I'm
horsewhip
gonna
you.
horsewhip you. Yeah.
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 So he basically is cutting him loose, and it's ironic that in that way he's sort of setting Davy up as the more self-sufficient of the two at that time, right? Like
Yeah.
that
And by
it's
the end, we'll get to the end but I do think, Davy is not where he needs to be at the start of the movie. He has to go on a little arc as well, and to essentially become more of a man in the way that his dad is in some sense, right? He has to become more confident. He has to stand up for himself. He has to be willing to stand up for what he believes in, which at the beginning he's just kind of unwilling to do. He's just sort of like a background player in the trouble being caused by his brother. And he hates it, and he doesn't like how it reflects on him, but he doesn't really do anything about it because he won't stand up to him, right? And so he needs to kind of, so by the end, certainly.
yeah.
But yeah. But the movie is rather balanced, I think, in its
Yeah.
critique.
Well, Davy is not really part of the final act of the movie, right? Like he's kind of
No.
his arc is done by the time he decides that he and Clee are going to be married, and that he doesn't really care what his father has to say about it. So he's
Well,
out.
that final scene is really important to his
Yes,
arc, I think, as
yeah,
well.
the
But yeah,
final, yeah,
I
the
get what you're
final
saying.
scene, yeah, but like he's not part of the final confrontation. He's kind of
No.
he's fulfilled his character arc. He doesn't have anything more to do. Like by the time Ed has gone completely rogue, completely black hat, and become an outlaw, basically. So yeah, I could see
So
that.
getting back to the scene where they're shooting, excuse me, at bottles, right? Lee is like, well, I don't know if I would have been any quicker than you, but if it had been a man over there, I think I might have. And he's like, Ed's like, yeah, right. He's like, no, I've seen a lot of men when it came to actually shooting a person, they freeze, they slow up, and so. He thinks it's obviously important to be willing to do that, but what he doesn't understand is that Ed's kind of a psychopath. So Ed is going to have no problem with that part. like
Yeah.
Ed, that is the least of Ed's
He's
problem.
not going to freeze at all, even when there is
No,
an
even when he
unarmed man
should.
attempting to stop him from doing something rash.
Yes. Yes, indeed. That is not something he is going to struggle with at all. So that's basically our intro scene. Then it is time to go on the first,
Well, real
horse.
quick, I want before we get to the conclusion, I want to, the big dramatic moment of this scene is
Oh
that
shit! Sorry, I
because
skipped right over it.
yeah,
Yes.
because what he
No,
said, what Lee says is like, well, if it had been a man over there, I've seen a lot of men freeze. He goes, well, there's a quick, easy way to test that. Ed says, he goes, well, suppose each of us took a tin can and held it out, like stretched our arms out and held it out about here, and on the count, Davy counts, and on the count of three, we each fire at the tin cans, and Lee is like, what the fuck are you? What in the goddamn hell are you talking about? Like,
yeah, no,
absolutely
no fucking
not.
way am I gonna let you do that.
Not even if that was a
Absolutely not.
gallon jug, am I gonna like I'm not gonna let you do that, and I'm not gonna do that with you standing over there, right? He goes, but I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll put it over here on the fence, and maybe we can have like a quick draw competition, and Davy snarks off in the background and says something like, what a damn fool idea that is. And Ed says, "Oh, you don't think I can, huh?" And as his dad is putting the can on the fence, like hand is practically still on it, he pulls the gun and shoots it with his dad standing right there, right down range. And there's a great musical sting
Oh
because
yeah,
you're just like,
certainly.
whoa! It really adds to
That's
the
a real
drama of it, right?
escalation. And it's the perfect example because Ed is going to slowly reveal that he's actually quite a bit more than just a hothead, right? Like it's not just that he is really competitive. It's not just that he's kind of quick-tempered. It's like, no, something is wrong with Ed, right?
Yes, yeah.
And this is one of the first examples, right? Where after his dad was like, "Absolutely not, I'm not going to do that," and he's like, "Oh yeah, you think I can't?" Shoots it right out of his hand without warning him, right? And his dad's like, "Oh man, if you had been anyone else, I'd shoot you dead center right now." And then so he's mad at him immediately, and then he tries to like laugh it off because like because the adrenaline is starting to wear off a little bit, and he's like, "All right, get out of here." Like
Yeah, yeah,
he blows it off because he's not really because Ed is more like him in the ways that Van Heflin thinks a man should be, or sorry, the way Lee thinks a man should be, because Ed is more like that, especially in this rapidly changing times where, from his perspective, everyone's getting soft. He's kind of unwilling to see that, like, no, Ed is not just like you in the good ways. He's got some real issues,
yeah,
and because he's the only one in your life that you see as like continuing on what a man, especially a young man, ought to be, you're like overlooking some real personality flaws here.
yeah, for sure. I like the fact that he would even consider doing that is
Ye-
like evidence enough, right? But
Yes.
he like Topaz is saying, they were like his face is pure rage when he turns around. He
Oh
gives
yeah.
him the speech about like if that had been anybody else, I would have drilled you dead center. And then he kind of like when he immediately shifts when he realizes he's like, oh no, like, come on, this is my son. He's just like me. Maybe I would have been like that in the old days too, where you can kind of tell he's sort of deluding himself a little bit
Yeah.
that is like that's just, sowing your wild oats kind of thing, right? He's just
Yeah.
a wild guy, and he needs to burn that off. By age will burn it off for him. Um,
Exactly. Well,
yeah,
he says a great line to the sheriff, or someone is either the sheriff or the deputy later in the movie, where he's like, "A horse is no good if he doesn't buck the first time you try to put a saddle on him. You know that." And
yeah,
he's like, "That's
that's his
basically his
philosophy.
view."
Yeah,
Yeah, his view of what a man, like what a good man is that like a good man is wild and dangerous and needs to be sort of tamed and, directed into being a good person, but they need to be capable of that sort of thing. And that's what he doesn't see in Davy, which is one of the reasons you can tell he kind of thinks a bit less of him and doesn't quite know how to read him because he's a bit softer, he's a bit more, sensitive and effeminate and all that sort of stuff. But what he sees in his son is someone who's like, ah, yeah, he's competent and dangerous, and like, he has the potential to be a great man like I was, but and as a result, and because he's the only person he sees like that anymore, he's kind of unwilling to see that, like, no, it's worse. It's worse than that. This is the kind of horse you can't break, actually. You know, um, yeah. So he it takes him a long time to finally wake up to that. So one of the things they establish when Davy and goes to that store to go ask the guy about men to go on this horse drive is that Clee's brother, who is also half Indian, and two Indian men who have very Indian names that I can't remember at the moment.
Blue
Um,
Horse or Black Horse and Blue Eagle.
that's the one. That's the two. And so they're, hired to go on this run with them. So that will be
I
very
love the
important.
line, like their introductory line too, where they come out to Davy, and or Clee introduces them to Davy, and they say, they give the how, right? And Davy
Yes.
responds with a sort of timid like how, and Paul hits him with the what they mean is how much you're paying, which is
Ah, yeah, it's funny.
yeah, it's pretty good, fun stuff. And like
Georges Rex says, by the way, since you liked High and Low, I heard, how do you pronounce that name?
Tatsuya Nakadai. Yeah,
Yeah, died only this week. Rest in peace. He was great in High and Low. That would be the detective,
yeah,
right?
he's fantastic in High and Low. He's one of my, one of my two favorite Japanese actors. Maybe in top five all time. I would say him and Toshiro Mifune. Many wonderful partnerships in the movies. Sanjuro is another one. He's fantastic in that, which you haven't seen yet, and I got to get you
No,
to watch
but we
that
will.
one because
We certainly will.
yeah, but
So many things to cover, so little time. So they're out and, they're driving the horses through the wilderness. It's just a great little sequence of like, seeing how that's done. And they're all like hooting and hollering and having a good time. At one point, Lee looks on with pride as Ed and oh God, what's his
Paul.
name? The brother, Paul. Yes, they go chasing off after horses that are running away down the stream a way they weren't supposed to go. So they have to go run to catch up to him, and he's looking at him. He's like, ah, look at him go! Isn't that great? He's having a blast. This is what he lives for, essentially.
Yeah.
And so he gets to see them in action, and then they're camping out at
Well,
night. Just kind
Lee says something like, I gotta admit that half Indian, that half breed's pretty damn good. He's pretty good."
yeah,
And Ed overhears that, and so while they're camping that night, right? Like the cook is talking about how he thinks it's gonna rain, so he's handing out ponchos, and everybody's just kind of like, I don't want a poncho. Fuck you, fuck you, dude. I don't want a poncho.
it's not gonna
It's
rain.
not
What are you
gonna rain.
talking
There's not a
about?
cloud in the sky. And he goes, "Oh, you okay? You whatever. I'm telling you, it's gonna rain." And so Ed decides to deliberately antagonize the Indians who are helping him, and
He's like,
start.
hey, what do you think, Indians? Do you think it's gonna rain?
Yeah,
And
I
he's like,
thought
I don't
you
know, Ed.
Sue could read sign on the weather like a farmer's almanac. What's the matter? Too much white blood spoil your medicine? And
Oof.
which is
Oh, God, the dialogue is so good.
it's it's really good,
So
man.
many great punchy lines.
Yeah.
It's like, especially his lines, when you hear them, you're like, oh God. Like,
Yeah, yeah, and so they get in a little
oh, but
scrap.
yeah, but his response, Paul's response is
Oh yeah,
really
yeah,
good
yeah.
because Paul's like, hey man, Like you knew what we were. You
I
knew I was
needed
Half
I
Indian.
came because you needed hands, and you knew the color of mine. If they're not good enough for you now, then I'll go home. Basically,
Yes,
yeah.
you knew the color of mine. That's a really such a great way of
It's a
phrasing that.
really good line. Yeah.
And then, Lee steps in. He's like, all right, like calm the fuck down. And he tells Ed, like, Ed, go, watch the herd. And he's like, oh, but I did. He's like, just do as I say, right? And that's the tension, right, between the like, he wants to be one of the boys, but also like call me Lee, don't call me sir, all that sort of stuff. But then when push comes to shove, he orders them around. So he's got a sort of unhealthy relationship with like the proper authority he should have over them, right? Because he exercises it when he feels he needs to, but at the same time, he like doesn't want to be viewed as a dad. It's very strange, but it's interesting. And so he tells Ed like, go off, go watch the herd. And he goes out without a poncho. And then what do you know? It starts to rain. And so they're roughing it. They're sleeping under the wagons and everything like that. And then he's like, "Oh, Davey, go give Ed a poncho." And he's like, "It's like fine. It's like it's not like he's gonna thank me for it. It's not like you thank me for it."
He
And Lee
says, "Why
goes,
should I? He's your brother, isn't he?"
"Yeah." And then he laughs. Right? It's
Yeah.
like I don't know.
There's
It's
something
really
really interesting
interesting.
about that line too, right? Where it's like because he's about to go out. I think Davy's about, or not, Lee's about to go out to give Ed the poncho. He's like, I can't leave him out there in the rain like this, right? Like,
Mm.
I'm gonna go do that. And Davy goes, I'll do it. I'll take him the poncho. He said he didn't want it, but I'll take him the poncho. Fine. And it's like, well, not that he'll thank me for it. It's like, not that you'll thank me for it. So it's just interesting, right? That he's like,
Yeah.
he's all about self-sufficiency. He's all about, not asking for help or doing a favor, because then that'll mean that the guy gets the idea that he's better than you, right? But
Or that
then,
you owe him something.
yeah, but
Yeah.
he also, like, that conflicts with his desire clearly to just like be a good dad, right? Because he's just
Yeah.
like, I should take my son a poncho since I sent him out there in this. I didn't think it was gonna rain, right? He didn't think it was gonna rain, but I sent him out there in this deluge, right? And now
Hmm.
he's like, he feels concern, but like the conflict between his ideology that like that means that he thinks he's better than him just doesn't even register, right?
No. He
Which
has
is,
no
yeah,
idea that like all that resentment and is that Ed took that to heart and all that resentment is like slowly building up
yeah,
as his life goes on. You could also read into it that Davy is like, I better take it to him instead of you because he won't like it if you do it.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like there's a
absolutely.
little bit of that as well. I don't
Even
know.
the way
That's
he
one way to
reacts
read
to
it.
like finding out whose money Davy comes to him
Oh,
with later.
God, it's so good, man. So good. So, it's the next day. They're driving the horses, and oh my gosh, remember that white mare that we mentioned at the beginning of the movie? The one that Davy was
Davy
hoping
was hoping he could
was
get, but he fucked up because he's not good. He's not a good roper.
because he sucks. Yeah. And oh, they see it,
He's a
and so they
third
go.
class roper with a fourth class deck.
And so Ed and Paul go chasing after this wild white mare, this beautiful white horse that's just racing along the ridgeline. And they go chasing after it. And before they can manage to catch it, um, it jumps over a ravine, right? And Paul doesn't try to make the jump, but Ed does. Ed tries to make the jump, but he hurts his horse because they don't quite stick the landing, and it looks like it hurt the horse. You know,
Yeah,
I,
but yeah. So
I
somebody mentioned this earlier, right? Is like, and I think it was Topaz. He said, "I know it's common for the time, but I don't like seeing how hard these horses land." Right? And it's like,
yeah,
yeah, these are, first of all, the white mare is beautiful, but there are some of the most beautiful horses. I mean, I'm
oh, they're
sure
great
that like
horses.
in
There's a good horse movie if you like
yeah, if you
horses,
like horses, this is great because they really get some screen time. They get to run, they get to do their thing like horses
like
do.
full tilt. Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic, and there's also some rather impressive stunts. So like the horse
impressive in
stuntman.
a way that makes you go, Did they just hurt that horse?
Yeah, did they
Like,
did they just like significantly injure that horse?
It's a little unclear.
Yeah.
There's two examples. One is the one we just mentioned, where they jump over the ravine, but they're a little short, and the horse takes it pretty hard. In the next scene, we'll see, and obviously they've like painted this on there, but the horse is in kind of rough shape, and Ed's trying to get the saddle off, and everyone's like, "Why'd you have to make that jump, Ed? Like, look what you did to your horse. That's no way to treat a horse." And he's like, "Ah, the horse is lucky I don't shoot him." He's like, "Get out of here." He's being very mean to the horse because Ed's kind of a psycho. And they're all like,
Yeah, well,
all the
he's like your
characters.
classic like evil Pokemon rival, right? Like he's the one who in the gold and silver version who's like, oh, Pokemon, strong Pokemon are the only ones that are worth it. My Pokemon are weak, and that's why they keep losing to you. And I've got to find stronger ones if I'm gonna win, right? Like
Yes.
he's got that streak of sadism to him when it comes to the
Yeah.
horse, which is
But
just yeah,
side note, Tab Hunter would be a great name for like a Pokemon villain.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, he's very mean to his horse, right? And he thinks the horse failed him essentially. Like, I would have been able to make that jump if it was the stupid horse. It's like, relax, man. Be nicer to the horse, please. But like, this is just another, like, we're just stacking examples that are going to get worse and worse of like, I think there's something really wrong with Ed, actually. I think it's not just that he's a little wild. I think he's a
Oh,
lot
well, the
wild.
next scene, like, because after he gets his
Oh, we're getting there.
his second horse saddled up, he does have a little bit of, I guess maybe you could say a little bit of affection for his brother. He shows that here because Davy wants to patch his arm up. He not only did he hurt his horse taking that jump, he hurt himself. His arm is
Yes.
bloodied. And Davy's like, you should let me patch that up for you at least. And he goes, no, it's fine. I'm going to get back out there before Paul can get that horse, right? And Davy's basically just like, oh, come on, man. He goes, you know what, Davy? If I catch that mare, she's yours, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
gift her to you because I know you wanted her. And, I see an opportunity. Like, I'm going to get out there and do it, right?
He
And
does, like, because he's not a complete psychopath. He has some affection for his brother,
when one
though
of the murders takes place because of the affection for his brother, right? Like, that's,
yes,
yeah.
exactly. So, like, he does like his brother, and he wants to
Actually,
do
both
nice
of the
things for
murders,
him.
now that I think about it, both,
The
both.
other, the other side of it, though, is that like he doesn't want the horse so much as he just wants to be seen as the one who gets the horse. Like he wants to capture the horse that no one else can. He wants to beat Paul to it. He doesn't really want the horse as much. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
Davy that wants the horse, but he just wants
He
to be
just
the
wants
one
the
to catch it.
glory, yeah.
He wants the glory, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a little, there's a little bit of a genuine love and affection for his brother there, kind of clouded by like, I just need to be the best at everything, which is like 90% of his character.
Yeah.
But
So he
yeah,
heads
so he
back
get
out onto the mesa.
and they get another chance at
Yeah.
trying to capture this mare immediately, which is nice. And so they're chasing after it, and they're running along a ridge line, him and Paul, and we
Yeah.
see that the two Indians are kind of watching this play out, and Ed he says like, "Give me room," along like as they're running along the edge line, and Paul says, "I can't," and he says, "Well, I'm making room," and he runs Paul off of the cliff on his horse, and he
That dude,
falls
when I saw
to
that for
his
the first
death.
time, I was like, "Oh, Jesus!" Like, that was like a
Yeah.
shocking moment. And when you see the stunt, I mean, like, it's it's really good. It's like
It looks
it,
so good, you're a little worried
yeah,
that they didn't just kill that horse.
yeah. It does feel a little bit like maybe they just were like, this one, like he'll, yeah, he'll maybe he's had a good life. Let's just.
I don't think
I
they
doubt
were
that that's what
actually
they
like,
did.
no, like I think there's a way, obviously you could have a lot of stuff in padding just out of the shot there, but it's a big fall regardless.
Yeah.
It's quite the stunt, and I was not ready for it when I watched. Oh, there it is in the trailer. Oh, you can see it.
Yeah,
No, it's
it's
huge. It's a huge drop.
really really brutal looking, man. Like it's tough.
Yeah, it's wild. It feels very real, and
I've
it
rewound it a
hits you
couple
like a ton of
times now
bricks.
in this on this Russian website thing here, and like I don't know how they did that because like he's still riding, on
Mhm.
the ridge.
It's
That
definitely not a like a doll or anything or a
no,
dummy.
like maybe the dude on the horse is a
Actually,
dummy.
that could be a dummy. That could be a dummy person because I think we cut it in a way where like that could be a dummy
The
person.
person it looks like the person looks like fake. I don't
Yeah.
know how they did that with the horse, and I'm not really keen on
Do
finding
you
out.
think
Like,
it? Do you think it's probably a dummy horse? Is
I
that
I would
possible?
hope
It's pretty
so.
far
I
away.
mean, it is pretty far away. It is small, but like, yeah, it looks great, man.
It's the I think actually the closer I look at it, there is a chance that cause it's a long shot, so like as in it's really far away, so it's kind of hard to tell. It's very convincing either way, but I could believe that that is not a real horse, but
Yeah,
it feels real when you watch it. And because it's an old movie, you do kind of wonder,
yeah.
like,
Now,
wait a minute.
J. Jameson is asking, did this film have the disclaimer "No animals were harmed" boilerplate? I don't remember seeing that. It
No,
kind of
well, first
just
of all,
cold opens.
this is one of those movies where there are no end credits. It's all in the beginning, and like they only credit like maybe like an eighth of the total people that worked on the movie because that's just how they used to do it. I don't think there is a no animals were harmed thing in it. I don't think that was anything
I don't
anyone
think.
cared about
Yeah,
at the time. Let's
yeah.
see.
When was I'm gonna look that up.
No, I see the characters and incidents portrayed are fictitious, blah blah blah, that sort of standard thing, and then just normal credits. Filmed in CinemaScope. No, there's no horses were brutally murdered. I think I can believe that that was actually a horse dummy, but I just never
The
really
"No
thought about.
animals were harmed" boilerplate did not start being issued in movies until 1972.
Exactly.
So
Um,
until then, you could harm as many animals as you wanted in the movies and probably get away with it.
um, I would say that I think that was a dummy horse as well as a dummy person, but I could be wrong. Either way,
I am
very
gonna
convincing
choose to
stunt.
believe that it was.
Very convincing stunt either way. But yeah, no, he rides that guy off the cliff and he dies.
I
So
mean, yeah, there's no way he would have lived because like when you see like the stunt, the way that it's done, right? Like it's unreal to try to imagine how like you would have done that, right? Like it looks
yeah,
it's the kind of fall that would kill you. And you can
yes.
kind of just tell by looking at it. So when it happens, you're like, "Oh, wow."
Yeah, that guy's dead for sure. And sure enough, but he keeps riding. He doesn't stop chasing the mare. Very important. He captures the mare. He gets the rope on her, and then he like subdues it enough that like he ties it to his horse. Then he jumps off his horse to go see if the guy lived. And he comes up to the cliff. Ed does, and he looks over and he sees Paul's mangled body
Well, he calls
at
his
the bottom.
name, which is also important,
Yes.
right? Because like he calls his name, doesn't get a response, sees the body, and then just walks away. And so then the two
Yes.
Black Horse and Blue Eagle come by to look as well, and they see the mangled body. So like you know that they understand, like he knows what he did. Yeah, that's
Oh yeah.
yeah.
He knows what he did, and well, he could have stopped running when he ran him off the cliff, but he didn't. And then he could have gone down there to like see if he was really okay, but he didn't. He was uh, incredibly callous. If it was indeed not intent, I mean, he did. It's complicated. The whole rest of the movie will kind of be about whether he did this on purpose or not, and to what degree he, did this in cold blood. But um, pretty bad either way. I would
Yeah, well,
say things are not looking.
the first two killings that he does are the ones that are kind of ambiguous, right? Because there's this one where
Yes.
it's like, we hear him say, "Then I'm making room," right? And he pushes him
Hmm.
off. But it could be one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's like it's accidental, right? Like, like, you're
Yeah.
in a rough business, you're horse wrangling, you're on top of a
Hmm.
mesa, you're riding pretty close to the edge. And like if somebody else comes through, what are you gonna do, right? And then the second one is when the guy pulls like Ed comes out to Severs, the horse thief, right? Because he'll end up extorting them for some horses. He comes out to confront him, and Severs pulls a gun on him. So Ed shoots him, right? And I mean, he shoots the gun out of his hand first, and then shoots him dead center. But it's one of those things where it's like, well, I mean, he did pull the gun first, and he did shoot first.
I
Like
know.
we do
Yeah,
see him
exactly.
do that, right? So
They're more they get less and less ambiguous until at the end he's just literally saying anyone that comes up that hill I'm gonna shoot. And it's like, oh Jesus, man. So like in terms of ramping up whether people are willing to acknowledge just how much of a psycho uh Ed really is, like they do a really good job of that. Where at first like, oh, that could have well, first of all, they do believe it was an accident until the real story comes out. But then, even then, Davies like, maybe he didn't really mean to do it so much as like just he was so competitive. He's like, get out of my way, and didn't care that like if the guy he didn't care if the guy would get out of his way or not. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But then by the end of the movie, it's like, no, he's kind of just a killer,
yeah,
you know.
he's
And
yeah.
certainly he sort of desensitizes himself to it. That's for sure. So they run him off the mesa, and then he comes back and he tells his dad and Davy and everyone else there that he died. It was an accident. There was nothing I could do. And so Lee's like, "Damn, that's tragic. He was a really good, he was a really good writer. He's really good help and all that sort of stuff. You go run back to town and tell his brothers and his family what happened. And here's some money. I think it's $100.
Yeah, it's $100
Uh,
and tell her I'm sorry about this, because I mean Ed's told them it was an accident, and they
yeah,
can't go get the body. George is asking. They did say there was no, or sorry, I thought you said did they say? Yeah, no, they say that there's no way really to get down to get the body. It's kind of in a
not
difficult
feasible,
spot, not
really.
feasible to with the time deadline that they have to make, getting to Jackson City. So he sends Davy with $100, basically of like insurance pay, back to the trading post for Klee, and while the rest of them head on to the city. Um,
Yeah.
and
I want to mention that like $100 is a lot back then.
yes,
But even still, there's like a question of like, well, how much is a man's life worth, really? You know what I mean? Which is really interesting. But like, so he just in terms of like what this says about Lee's character, he's like, Jesus, that's horrible. That's tragic. Well, we got to let his family know, and we'll send him some money because like, I want them to know how bad we feel about it, and that like, since it happened like during our job and I'm the boss, obviously I need to do something to help them out. And he's like trying to be generous, right? But of course he doesn't know that maybe it was a little bit less than an accident.
yeah.
That will
Yeah,
not
so
come out until later.
real quick, Jay Jameson is saying, given him shooting the can out of his own father's hand, I'm not inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt. You as the audience absolutely shouldn't be.
No, you
Yeah,
shouldn't.
we're kind of making the argument from the case of like the people in the movie, right? Like the other
Yeah,
characters
what
in the
they think
movie,
happened at the
how
time.
how it could be spun. I mean, we as the audience hear him say, give me some room, and then he says, I can't. He says, I'm making room, and he kicks him off, right? So we know it
Or
was
like
done
he
deliberately.
he cuts him off so there's nowhere to go but off the cliff,
Yeah, yeah. As
essentially.
the audience, this is like gonna start to spiral out of control. Like that's
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's not really presented as like you as the audience could have like multiple, a different way of viewing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
But it's only going to get worse as well.
Yeah,
So Davy goes riding back into town, or at least to that trading post where he was at the beginning of the movie. He's looking for Clee, Paul, the deceased Paul's sister, and she's not there.
she's
And
gone
he's like, "I
with the two Indians to see
the
where
body,
the
see where it
body
happened." And
where it
yeah,
happened, and as he says, as their representative says, how it happened. And
he's
Davey
like, "What do
says
you
like, what
mean by that?
do you mean? Like
It
didn't
was
they
an
tell you it was an
accident."
accident? And he says no, they called it murder.
It's like, "Oh shit!" And he's also like, "Stay away from Clee. Just like it's for the best. Just don't." Please just stay away from her. So Davy learns that the Black Horse. What are their names again? I keep
Black
forgetting them.
Horse and Blue Eagle.
Black Horse and Blue Eagle said that it was a murder, and they told Clea as such. And then they rode out to where it happened to go find the body and see how it happened. Right. So then they go back to the ranch, and they're bringing all the horses in and everything. They're putting them into the fences and all that sort of stuff, the corral. And then Lee's like, well, that's the job done. Good job, boys. Like, let's go down to the town to the saloon. And like, oh, I'll race you there, essentially, he
Yeah.
says to Ed, and he's like, I'll have had 3 drinks before by the time you get there. So they go riding off on their horses into town. And then we get a little bit of Lee still kind of like acting like a schoolboy a little bit, where as they're
Yeah,
riding
man.
into
He
town,
basically says like, I can beat, to Ed. He's like, I'll be able to beat you there, no problem. I'll be at the cattleman's bar having 3 drinks before you can even show up. And they take off, in a race, essentially, a very reckless race, both of them, right? Like
yes,
Lee's way of winning is there's a cart carrying some beer kegs through the town, and he just undoes the back of the cart so all the beer kegs will roll out into the street and distract, or like they basically cause an obstacle for Ed to be able to get through. So
acting like a pretty reckless
yeah,
teenager, and he's like 40 or 50 or
yeah,
something,
he's
you know.
he's an old man who's still
Yeah.
doing these like teenage stunts. Ed takes this like shortcut base, like he basically goes, oh, okay, well, if that you're gonna play that way, then I'm gonna ride my horse down the sidewalk. He almost hits multiple people as he's riding
Yeah.
through. And
And ultimately, Lee does get to the bar before him, and he's already drinking. He's like, "Ah, see, I told you so." Ed is very, very unhappy about this, but Lee is also he continues the humiliation because he calls him out in front of everyone. Everyone laughs, right? So Ed really doesn't like that, and he's like, "Oh, why don't you get a what kind of soda do you want? Ah, maybe you want a glass of milk, right?" He's like,
yeah.
"Ah, because you're like a little baby. You're a little baby bitch," and Ed is really,
It's
really
yeah.
unhappy about this.
It's like what happens when you play your younger cousins at Mario Kart at Thanksgiving.
Yeah. And so he
They start
starts
crying, and
drinking
you're just like,
and
"Oh, little baby, gonna cry," and you're
and
fucking
so
35.
Lee and all his sycophantic friends are like hooting and hollering and carrying on and all they're all like
Reminiscing about the
reminiscing
old
and all the
days.
amazing things he used to do and all the great stories and Ed is just sitting there stewing, drinking a lot in a very short amount of time. They mention a painting of a bull on the wall. That will become important in a second. And then we also are introduced to a new character, a stranger who doesn't know who the Hacketts are, who's just kind of sitting there off to the side. He's like, "Who's that?" And like, "Oh, that's Lee Hackett. He's the most famous man in these parts. He built this place." So they're carrying on. They're talking about the good old days and everything like that. And they mention the painting of a bull on the wall. And Ed's like, "Oh yeah, check this out." And he shoots his gun. It's also worth mentioning that on the ride in, a couple people noticed they were wearing guns and were like alarmed by it, right? So this is
Yes.
not something most people in the town do. And so he pulls out his gun in the middle of the saloon and starts shooting
Well,
quite
first
actively.
he throws his bottle of whiskey against
Oh,
like and
true. Yep.
smashes the mirror in the back of the bar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
He's like, "Oh yeah, check this out."
he pulls out his gun, he shoots him in the ear, and I can't remember the term for a cow missing an ear, but then he shoots him in the tail. He goes, "Now he's a bobtail," and then he goes, "Let me put the Hackett brand on him, Lee." And Lee's like, "Yeah, put the gun away." He goes, "Ah, come on, just let me brand him." And Lee gets very stern with him, and Ed's like just absolute rage in his face, and he goes, as he says, like, "Yes, sir," and then he like puts it away, says that he'll stand for any of the damages that he's caused, and then he.
Jesus, he's like, I'm sorry. I thought I raised him better than that. I thought I told him to hold his liquor."
Well, one of the things I
He kind of
wanted to
laughed
talk
it
about
off.
real quick too is that like this is the second time we're gonna see as Ed tries to walk away, Lee calls his name, right, and he freezes. Like
Mhm.
freezes and turns around. Like he doesn't have a reason to really. Like there's that still sort of like it's like the spell that a father has over his son, right? Like you
Yeah,
hear your name, like, even if you're like infuriated, you hear your name and you like know to stop, right, and like
yeah,
listen to what he's about to say. And like he does that twice, right? He goes, "You go upstairs and wash up, you're done." And what he does instead is there's a waiter carrying a bottle of whiskey in a glass, and he just snatches the bottle off the tray and walks out the door. And it's kind of like a very like a petulant sort of display of like, "Oh yeah, well, I'm not gonna, you can't tell me what to do," and he
yeah.
leaves. you know?
essentially. And then Lee sort of like laughs it off. He makes a joke out of it, and everyone kind of goes back. He sort of diffuses the tension, being like, "Oh, boys will be boys," essentially. And he tells the bartender, he's like, "Listen, I'll cover all the damages to the mirror and the painting. Don't worry about that." And the bartender says, like, "Oh, don't worry about it, man, Mr. Hackett. Like, don't worry about it at all." And
Yeah.
then he goes over to the stranger sitting at the bar and he's like, "You mean you're not going to charge him for the damages?" And he goes like, "Oh, you don't charge Lee Hackett. You just do him a favor because he's a
Mighty
very
generous
generous man
man when it's
if
a
it's a
favor.
favor." Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this guy is sitting at the bar and he's like, I wonder where we're going with this narratively. Meanwhile, Ed is on a horse, like drunk driving, essentially. He has just a bottle
Dude,
of whiskey.
I love the line that he says. Hold on, let me get this. Let me get it for you real quick because I got to listen to it to get the right wording. But the line when the sheriff comes up to talk to him, and he rattles off why the sheriff can't like can't get him on anything. It's kind of
Mhm.
it's like it's really funny. So give me 1 second.
Take your time. Yeah, so he's drunk and he's riding the horse, and the sheriff and another fella come by, and they're like they're essentially there to confront him about the disorderly scene he caused in the town when him and his father were riding through and carrying on, and that like they're just riding on the sidewalk and everything and carrying a gun. He's like, "You better knock that shit off when you're in town, all right?"
Yeah. So he says the sheriff comes up and he goes, "Look here, sheriff. I'm free, white, male, over 21, and dry as a Texas duster." And then he pulls the bottle of bourbon out of his pocket to take
Yeah.
a drink. It's and he offers. He's like, "Drink," and he offers it to the sheriff. It's funny, man.
And he's trying to warn him. He's like, "You're right on the sidewalk. You're doing all this dangerous stuff." And then he starts to take a drink. He's like, "Now, like, take that
Take
bottle
that
out of your
bottle out
mouth."
of your mouth when I'm speaking to you. He goes, "Sheriff, I don't use my mouth to listen with. I use my ears." It's there's some really funny lines in this
Yeah.
movie, man. It's
And the
really
sheriff's
good.
like, "Well, then you listen to me. Like, you better knock it off when you're in town." He's like, "Okay, sheriff," but he's like, he doesn't give a shit. It's like, and you better ride um, like slowly in town. Like, don't go racing through town. And then as he's like walking off, he just, he goes off in the distance rather quickly, just to be like, "Fuck you! I don't listen to you. You don't tell me what to do."
But
And then
the
this other
the
deputy,
sheriff tells him that he's got this deputy who just came out. He used to be a prize fighter, just came out from down east, right? Like he gives us a little backstory real quick
yeah,
for
he's
some.
gonna be watching you. And
Yeah.
he's like, "Okay, yeah, whatever
Oh,
you
oh,
say."
yeah.
And then the deputy is like, he wrote, it's like, "You want me to go running after him?" It's like, "No, just keep an eye on him." And he's like, "Well, where do I find him?" It's like, "Where do you expect to find him, in a prayer meeting?" Which is the great line, because the immediate next thing we see
Is him
is
leaving a
Ed coming out of a
prostitute's room.
whorehouse.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's like it's a perfect little segue. It's great. So it's the next morning. They're out on the ranch or whatever, and the stranger who was in the bar is there, and he's like looking at their horses, and they're like, "Oh, you looking to buy any?" He's like, "No, I'm just looking." He's like, "Okay." He's looking. Eventually, Ed shows up, and they're like,
Oh
"Where the
my
hell
god,
were you?"
that line that he delivers here is so good, man. Because he's just like, it's like, "Where were you last night?" He says, "Out." It's like, "Funny, I didn't run into you." Because it would have been funnier if you had. It's like,
Oh, it's so good.
it's really funny, man.
There's a lot of fun lines in this movie. Would have been funnier if you had. Yeah. And he sort of writes it off as like, boys will be boys kind of thing. So, uh-oh. But then the sheriff and the agent who was there on behalf of the Indians and
Yeah, the
Paul's
Indians, the Injuns.
family.
Oh, this is also the
Uh,
line though where we get Lee's like buddy being like,
oh, true.
yeah,
Yes.
like so this is kind of important. Is when he says to him, he says like, "Now are you his fatherly? Because where did I get the impression you just wanted to be one of the boys? Whose idea was it to have him call you Lee instead of Dad or Pa?" Right? And Lee doesn't like he
He doesn't have a good
starts to
answer.
respond, but immediately as he does that, the sheriff and the agent for the engines rides in.
Yeah. Yeah, he goes to respond, but there's also like a hesitation where he just like, you can tell like he doesn't really know what to say to that, you know, which is good. And so they show up and they're like, listen, we're here to take Ed in. We're here to take Ed in." And they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? And it's like, the charge is murder. And he's like, what? Yeah, yeah, right. What are you talking about? And it's like, the I already forgot their names again, even though you've said it several times.
Black Horse and Blue Eagle.
Black Horse and Blue Eagle said that Ed killed Paul, that he wrote him off on purpose. And Lee's like, "Oh, you gonna take the word of two stinking Sioux over my
Oof.
son?" And it's like, oh, like Ed, like, or sorry, Lee's like, relax. We don't have to hold court out here. Um, but basically, he's like, it gets to a point. I don't remember the exact line, but it gets to a point where it's one of the more interesting little bits for me in terms of Lee as a character and his backstory. It's just like, oh, you're gonna take the word of two stinking Sioux, and it's like, perhaps you forgot, what we had to do to build this town in the first place, all the raiding parties, all the women and children that were massacred. You're gonna take their word over my sons. So it's like, oh, yeah. So Lee was here. He even mentions like, oh, you should have seen what it was like 25 years ago. So like, Lee was here in the early days of the frontier where they literally had to fight off the Sioux who were like kidnapping and, beheading women and children and scalping them and all that sort of stuff, as was quite common with certain tribes. And so he saw that firsthand and he fought them off himself. And the only reason that there's a town here at all is because of men like him. And then he's like, "Oh, you're, on the word only of two Indians, you're going to accuse my son of murder." He's like, "Yeah, fucking right." And it's like, Lee, relax. Like, we don't have to hold court here. We're just gonna bring him in. We're gonna have a hearing. I think that's just like really interesting because he isn't very nice to the Indians in the movie,
No, no,
but
he's
it's
not.
a little understandable why when you understand the history of what happened in a lot of these places. So it's like, I don't know, it just makes everything like kind of like layered and complex in a really interesting way, especially when he brings up like all the women and children that were massacred by them. It's like, yeah, yeah, I imagine if you went through that and like yourself, you would have a different opinion. You would be a little, because later in the movie, he's going to be,
I mean, in
um,
the very next scene, he's going to say something because one of the other two Indians is testifying to the charge of murder. And he says, "You're sure that he wasn't aware that they were on the edge of a cliff?" He says, "I don't see how a man could be, unaware of that, like riding on the
mhm.
edge of a cliff." And the judge asks something like, "And you heard you heard Paul shout something as he fell, right?" He says, "Yes, sir. I've heard the Sioux death cry before." And Lee goes, "Oh, what's that prove? I heard that cry, many times before, and when I was damn glad to hear it, I don't mind telling you." And the whole courtroom kind of like laughs along with it, and you can see
Yeah,
his like little boost of confidence. But you realize like, yeah, no, I mean, I bet you,
you
yeah,
would think that.
you would think
Yeah,
that, yeah, yeah.
absolutely. And that's why I find this movie so interesting, is because the movie acknowledges what I think a lot of people don't like to acknowledge, is that a lot of those, Indian tribes were especially brutal and had no real qualms about like doing horrific things to women and children. And so you imagine a lot of people on the frontier were,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
this
very,
is
go
this is also
ahead.
like before at least 12 years before the publication of Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, which
Hmm.
was kind of a turning point in the way that Americans viewed the Native American story. Is it's sort of the switch. Like, I mean, Dan Carlin mentions this at one point in his Wrath of the Khan series, which if nobody else has checked that out, you absolutely should. It's really good. But the Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee book kind of swung the pendulum away from viewing the Native Americans as a sort of like tribal, savage sort of people into viewing them in the more like Pocahontas movie type
A
way.
noble savage
Yeah, the noble
instead.
savage thing where it's like, oh, but
Yeah.
they were just living a peaceful utopian life, and we came
Hmm.
along and ruined that for them, and we're the bad guys for it, right? Like that book is sort of by historians at least that I'm aware of, like considered a landmark moment where it like swung it swung the pendulum away from understanding
What actually
what
happened?
actually had the actual conflicts between, because like
Yes.
obviously some of that is true, right? There were peaceful tribes and everything, but like not all
Some
of
were
them.
like,
Some were pretty
uh,
fucking brutal.
there's some
Um,
pretty bad hombres, I think you could
yeah.
say.
Yeah, so this is a
Yeah.
good bit before that. So you know,
Hmm.
they're not really concerned with um
Painting an unrealistically
painting
rosy
unrealistic picture,
picture or
yeah,
biased
looking
picture
at it all
of the
through
way things were.
rose-colored glasses, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's an interesting thing, and like he's going to be really upset with and feel a bit betrayed by the fact that his son is falling in love with a half Sioux woman, right? And you could understand why when he literally saw the Sioux like behead women and children who settled here and all that stuff, and he had to fight them off himself, and then like he saw them killing, his men and his own people and all that sort of stuff. You might imagine that that would upset him quite a bit, and that he wouldn't look too kindly on them. But it's another example of like, well, times are changing, and a lot of the Sioux that are still here in this area aren't like like brutal warring savages. They're just people. They're trying to live in town. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, things are changing. It's not that real. It's not that landscape anymore. You know what I mean? Like, the ones that are left were not those same original ones that you hated so much, and and not for no reason. But he doesn't take kindly to those those people that are claiming that his son murdered someone. He's like, fine, like, I will take him in, but like we'll go in for the hearing. But he's really unhappy about it, and he makes sure that they know. Next, we are into the courtroom scene, which I think is a really, really, really great scene. Kind of a long one and a
Yeah,
really.
it is long, but there's some really great stuff in here. So like for example, when like the two Indians who were on the, well, one of them, we see his testimony, right? And he gives that that speech about like, I don't see how a man could notice being on the edge of a drop like that. Yeah, it looked like he wrote him off deliberately, and like all, basically the judge is ready to have him stand for a charge of murder. Klee gets up there and gives a really great monologue as well, right? Where she talks, she has
Oh, hold on,
testimony. Yeah, go for
before
it.
we get to that. So the first thing, obviously, is it's established that he's being accused of writing him off deliberately, that he knew what he was doing, and that it wasn't an accident, that he specifically cut him off on a very narrow, ridge line and forced him over the edge, and then didn't go back to check on him. Right? Like he didn't immediately stop what he's doing to make it nothing that made it seem like an accident, right? So that's what he's accused of. And they're like, all right, do you have any more witnesses? And the defense brings Cleon. And he's like, well, was she there too? It's like, no, but she has testimony in, she has testimony for the veracity and the character of the witnesses who were there, right? And so she gets up on the stand mostly to say, well, first thing she says is like, oh, we went out to where it happened and we looked at the tracks and concluded that he did write him off. And even the judge is like, even if that were admissible evidence, like that doesn't really prove it wasn't an accident. Like that's actually not great evidence at all, actually, which is a good point. But then Clee kind of makes the case. The real reason she's up there is to yell at Lee,
Yeah,
essentially.
basically, yeah. It's character for to establish character of the witnesses, and
Hmm.
to basically make her stand, right? About like,
Yeah.
I don't want your son's life in exchange for my brother's, right?
Hmm.
I don't want to see
Him
your son
killed,
hanged,
hanged.
but I do want him to understand that what he did was wrong, and that a man's life, as she says, even if he is part stinking Sioux as I am, is worth more than a mare and $100. And she throws the money on the floor and like hops off the
Yeah.
stand, right? And the judge kind of tells her, like, young lady, control yourself. Uh,
Yes.
which is,
Exactly.
yeah, but she makes a strong point, right? And the
Hmm.
judge is prepared to sentence him to stand for a trial of murder.
To
in
charge him with
to
murder,
charge
not
him with
sentence.
murder.
Yeah.
Yeah, to stand for a trial. Sorry, yeah. They're gonna have him stand for trial for murder until right at the dire moment, the stranger from the bar stands up and offers some testimony. And he gets up there and he says, "Well, I didn't, I can't stand to see a white man framed by a couple of Indians, so I wanna lie for this guy."
Uh,
And
Essentially,
yeah,
you assume. I mean, as the audience that he wasn't there, but a lot of people don't know that
yeah,
this is all going to be a lie. He gets up on the stand and was like, "I was there. I'm a horse trader. I was just passing through when I saw these men up on that cliff. But it didn't look like a ride off to me because he was nowhere close to him. It looked like he just fell." And I would hate to see a white man, like hanged on the word of
yeah.
two Indians.
And my
So
favorite part of this scene, right, is like as he's delivering this lie, right, like and he's standing up. Like, at one point, he stands up because the agent says, like, "How do we even know he was anywhere near that mesa?" Right,
yeah,
and Lee,
who is this guy? Who is
who
this?
is this guy? Where did he even come from? And as he stands up and lies, there's a portrait of George Washington on the wall behind him, with one of like giving one of the most disapproving grimaces that you could possibly imagine, and it's like it's
Yeah,
such a great frame because
yeah.
he's just kind of like like you just feel the disapproval radiating off of this portrait, which
It's
is
the famous unfinished portrait of George Washington. Um, they have a copy of it still unfinished hanging on the wall, which is interesting. An interesting choice. But yeah, it's kind of hanging between them. And at one point, Lee interjects, even though he's been told to shut the fuck up. Is like, well, how do they know your guys were even there? He's just
I mean,
he's
you brought him, so
So basically, after hearing his testimony, the judge was like, "Well, this complicates things. I don't think if it's the word of these two Indians who obviously
who
are
are
biased
blood
towards the
brothers and
victim because
friends of the
yeah
deceased, and
they're
just
obviously biased towards him. So, versus the one person, like a random white man who, doesn't have any say in any of this and doesn't know these people, I think it's going to be hard to convince a jury of the prosecution's case. So I don't think there's really enough here to go to trial. So I'm not going to charge him. Case closed, essentially.
yeah,
And so obviously, everyone on Ed's side of the aisle,
which is like the
they,
whole courtroom basically, except for
yes.
the agent Clee and the two Indians. They all burst into cheers. They are all heading out for drinks, and wouldn't you know it, Lee's gonna buy them all, drinks for everybody. And he turns.
I just hold on really quick. Topaz did say something that I disagree with, and I need to yell at him about it. I'm just kidding. On the trial, feels there's a broader critique of the idea of manifest destiny. Lee doesn't even seem to be offended by the idea of Ed's guilty. I disagree with that.
Yeah, I don't think that's
No,
true.
I
I
don't think
think
you
he
can say that.
doesn't want to believe his son is a murderer, and I think he gets
No, he
quite
doesn't want to believe. I think it's quite clear in the movie that Lee legitimately believes it was an accident, and these no good stinking Sioux, as he would put it, are accusing him for nothing, essentially, just trying to tear him down. Like that seems to be what he genuinely believes, and so he's quite happy, genuinely happy at the result when he's not going to be put to trial. So there's a combination of things. Obviously, he doesn't take their word very seriously because he doesn't like
You could
the
maybe
Sioux.
put the idea, like the critique of the idea of manifest destiny on that, right? Like that he doesn't take the word seriously of the people whose land he conquered, right?
Of the people who he saw massacring women and children, yeah. So I don't
Yeah.
see that's what I mean. It seems like pretty reasonable for his character based on everything he knows at the time. Obviously, he hasn't quite fully come to terms with the fact that Ed is a little bit of a psycho. He hasn't really noticed that fully yet, but I really don't think you can call this scene a critique of Manifest Destiny or anything like that because Lee is it's I don't think it's true that Lee isn't offended by the idea that he's guilty. Now he is offended by that idea because he thinks he wouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
He
it's
just
like
thinks the son is really
compounding, right?
competitive.
Yeah, it's compounding too because he's like, if it were white men accusing him, he'd probably be just as angry. But it's like it's worse that it's like,
Yes,
oh my god,
exactly.
yeah, oh my god, these
If it
two,
were just if yeah, it's
yeah,
just compounding. That's a great way to put it. Because if it were two white men, to be like, "What the hell?" Like, no,
no, of course
who are
not.
these guys that just want to tear my son down? You know what I mean? He doesn't think his son did it. He thinks his son it was just really competitive, and that they were racing for it, and the other guy fell off. He seems to believe his son pretty genuinely. So, um, see, but I think this ties into a larger question because if you do look at what few reviews of this movie are out there, you will see it said that this movie is kind of a critique of the Western kind of mythos, that you could say that this is actually a critique of Manifest Destiny, or like what you might call the simplistic, I wouldn't describe it this way, but the simplistic morals of a lot of Western movies, right? This is sort of like subversive in that way. And well, it's certainly different. Like you don't see as many Westerns with this particular kind of story. I don't think that you could accurately describe this movie that way, because I think this movie is actually rather like nuanced and complex in terms of what it's even trying to say. Because, like I said, it is kind of looking at it in a way where, like, basically everyone's a little bit right. Even Ed, when he's complaining about, living in his father's shadow, he's kind of right about some things. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
well, yeah, he's
Like,
right that like Lee is not a very good dad.
he's right that
Yeah,
he's not a good dad. Lee is right that Ed has learned all the wrong lessons because he doesn't understand really what it means to be a man. Davy is right that his dad and his brother are, like clinging to notions of masculinity
that are
uh,
outdated for the
to the
times. Yeah,
extreme. But also, Lee is correct that a lot of modern people are soft and are forgetting important things about what it means to be a man and what it means to be American. And also, like Lee is kind of right to not really have much sympathy for the Sioux because of everything he saw them do. But also, Clee and
yeah,
his brothers are right to be critical of the as the way they see it is like this, like the white people who will band together just to like ignore what happened to one of them and brush it under the rug, but also like they're right to believe that based on what they know at the time. You know what I mean? It's like
yeah.
it doesn't feel like we're just saying one thing or one side of it.
Yeah, that I think that's one of
Lee
the
feels
reasons why it's
Lee
such a
feels so
difficult
entitled.
way. Like it's so difficult to do like an elevator pitch for this movie because of how deep and complex like each thread of the story is, right? Like it like if you
Yeah,
start unraveling it, it really becomes like you realize there's a lot more to it than just the simple story on the surface, right? Like
yeah,
that's why it felt so like it feels when I think Georgia said earlier, right? Like the last 5 minutes, you could say, oh, a father has to confront that his ideals are outdated when his son, like has this problem, right? But that's not like it feels so surface level when you actually know the movie or like have sat down and watched it. It's like it's so much more than that, and I think that's one of the
yeah.
reasons why.
And that's why I sort of object to the read that like the movie is critical of Manifest Destiny or critical of, masculine, outdated, visions of masculinity. It's like it's not that simple. It's really not that simple. Like Topaz dude mentions, like he shouldn't have said just this scene, but I don't think it's true of the whole movie either. But you say in general,
I
Lee
think there's a
feels.
thread
Hold
you
on,
could pull.
hold
Sorry,
on.
yeah, go for it.
It feels Lee feels entitled to act the way he does because he was one of the guys who conquered the land back then. But yes, but he's kind of right. You know, when he's critical of the people in the town who, let's say, want to outlaw people from owning guns or like carrying guns in town and things like that, or like people are sort of like losing aspects of what it means to be a man and to be successful and to be an American, and that like they've forgotten already from his perspective, like
What
what
it
it meant
took.
to even what it took and like what it takes going into the future, what it ought to take in the future to like be a good man and to maintain civilization. Like he's not wrong about that. really, but he's also like using that as an excuse for some of his immature behavior in terms of like he's like, it's fine if I like knock loose a couple barrels or kegs of ale or in the street and cause a little commotion. It's all in good fun. I'll pay for it. Who cares? Right? So it's like it's a bit of both
Yeah,
for
it's
all
one
of
of those
these
things where
things.
it's like, he is the reason that that town exists in a way,
Yeah.
right? Like he's one of the last remnants of the reason why that town exists, because because his behavior helped make it so that the town could thrive, right?
Yeah.
So like he does have that entitlement, but he's not entirely wrong to have that. Really, that
No.
I don't think the movie is saying that it is either.
He
Um,
sees that that they have a lack of gratitude and an appreciation not just for what he did, but for the fact that the way he is the reason they're all here,
yeah,
essentially. And he's not wrong about that. And that's why I don't think you can call this movie a critique of Manifest Destiny, because it's like I don't think the movie thinks that this town existing or that, a European civilization making its way across the continent is a bad thing, especially because the movie is quite open to acknowledging that a lot of the tribes that they faced off against in the attempt to make that happen, to manifest that destiny, were horrendous. So it's like, I don't think you could say that the movie is a critique of that. I just don't think it's that simple. I don't think you could say the opposite is true either, because I think it's just kind of like it
yeah,
paints
it's
a
not. Yeah,
complex
it's a
portrait.
very complex film. Yeah, and more so than it would seem on the surface, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I like
Um,
it so much.
yeah, exactly. It just feels like I don't know, like great pains were taken to make sure that everyone is like somewhat reasonable and believable as a character. Like there are a lot of things that Davey says where I'm just like, that's true. And then he says something else. I'm like, well, that's not true, but I totally understand why you think that,
Yeah,
like that's kind of like how every character works in the entire movie. Right? Because you could say that like, oh, that this is like white systemic power, that is like operating itself against the poor Native Americans in this situation. It's like, well, this is really only happening because Ed lied to them. Everyone else legitimately thinks he's innocent. It's not just a tribal sort of like, no, you're not gonna get justice against one of our own. We're not gonna let you, convict one of our own. They genuinely believe him. And then they hear the testimony of this random stranger who's just lying for ulterior motives, but they don't know that yet. You know what I mean? It's like it's not as simple as what you might find like a,
yeah,
a typical
yeah,
modern leftist critique would be.
exactly. Yeah, because the stranger who lies to protect him, like they're just more willing to believe that he's telling the truth because it
Yeah.
confirms what they want to hear, right? It's not
And what
because
they've already heard
yeah,
too,
yeah,
They don't want to believe that Ed's a liar either. And a lot of
because they
them
love
have
him
no
because
reason to think,
yeah,
because like and to be clear, like Davy didn't see it. The only people that saw it were the two that are accusing him of murder and the dead guy. So like there is no one else but Ed, and Ed's a liar because Ed's a psychopath, but they don't know he's a psychopath
yeah,
yet. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like I don't know. It's really interesting, but basically, they all celebrate after the stranger helps avoid him getting charged with murder, and they like they go off and everything. And Davy stays behind to try to go over to them like, hey, I don't like the way that happened. I'm very sorry for what my brother did. And Clee just kind of leaves and ignores them. And then the agent's like, you're still Lee Hackett's son, all right? Like it's best that you just stay away from her. And so that upsets Davy, right? Because he feels like he's being tarnished by their bad actions, right? And so he has the opposite problem of Head. He doesn't want to be better than Lee. He just wants to not be Lee at all,
yeah.
right? And so they're out at the bar, and
Well,
it's Lee
Ed
with
is
Ed.
asking the stranger, Mr. Severs, what exactly? Yeah, he says, I'm very
What were you
grateful
doing
to
out
you,
there?
and he goes, well, I should think you would be, given I wasn't 100 miles, wasn't within 100 miles of that mesa at the time. And he says, "Oh, yeah. I wonder why. Why would you be doing that? Why would you do something like what you did?" And he basically says, "Well, I lost maybe I heard your father's a generous man when a favor is owed, right? Like, so would 10 of the best Mustangs in your herd sound fair?" And Ed is not thrilled about this,
No.
obviously. Um, he's a little like kind of you can tell he's kind of just like, oh, of course the only reason this guy's interested in me is because of my father, right? So Lee comes over and says something. Yeah, he says like kind of pitches the story like, oh well, I lost a string of Mustangs in that country a little while back. Maybe I could take a look at your herd and see if any of them are caught up in there. And he goes, oh, of course, yeah, come on by. Like, did you brand any of them? He's like, well, some of them, but not all. I was like, oh, well, why don't you come on by
Hair
and
branded a few.
yeah,
It
hair
might not
branded a
show
few.
up now, but yeah.
Yeah, gives him an
I'll
excuse.
recognize them.
It's just like, well, why don't you come on over? And if you see any that look like yours, you're welcome to them because he thinks,
Generous.
yeah, he's generous and he thinks this guy's just saved his son from being put on trial for murder.
Out of the goodness of his heart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I love the way that like because Ed goes to leave, right? And Lee says, "Oh, where are you going?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm just heading out on town." He goes, "Hey, good luck, Mister Seavers, looking for your Mustangs. I hope you find them. In fact, I'm willing to bet on it because he's giving him the snark because he knows
Yeah.
exactly what's going on here."
Yeah. And he doesn't like this, especially because it's all really because of Lee.
Yeah,
And this is going to be a growing problem for Ed, but every time he gets away with murder, literally, it's because either Ed bails him out or because because Lee bails him out or because someone wants something from Lee. And so he just kind of, what it reminds me of?
okay,
Not
go
to
for
get not to get too political, Hugh, but it reminds me of someone like Hunter Biden, right? Who constantly gets bailed out by his association with his dad and seems to like hate him for it anyway. You know what I mean? It's like he doesn't seem to like his dad for like bailing him out of these sort of things. You know what I mean? It's kind of like breeds a certain kind of resistance. Like you almost get the vibe. You mentioned it earlier when Lee like yells his name and it like forces Ed to stop, right? It's almost like you kind of see a little bit in Ed that he wants his dad to be the dad,
yeah,
right? And
exactly.
not
Yeah, yeah. He
not
wants him
not
to
a
be the
rival.
authority figure, not just one of the boys.
Yeah, he almost like wants to be punished by him a little bit, right? And he doesn't want him to help him bail him out of things or help him avoid responsibility of things. He would much rather, you know, just be confronted and punished for it, or at least to like, you know, figure it out himself and be his own man. Like it's a really interesting thing, and this is why I brought Hunter Biden up because if you look into it, it's like Hunter Biden seems to have done a whole bunch of stuff deliberately to sabotage his dad. It's actually kind of crazy how much like things he did on purpose. It seems. But like you get the sense when you're watching this that like Lee thinks like, oh, well, I'm helping you out. Why don't you appreciate it? And he's like, it's like because Ed hates him for helping him out,
Yeah,
essentially, and Lee just can't understand why.
yeah,
Someone said I was thinking of Denethor and Boromir. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
The Gilded Cage is still a cage, so of course there's resentment. Yeah, yeah. There's it's not quite the same, obviously, but there's a dynamic thing happening there where like the parents or the father like refuse to punish or take the proper role as parents in like correcting sort of a child, even if it's like an adult child's behavior, thinking that they're helping them out by refusing to let them face the consequences of their actions, but it only breeds more resentment, right? Because they want you to essentially, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's like a pathological need to have
Yeah.
that sort of discipline, right? Like
And
But
so he just
yeah,
keeps creating more situations for himself to get in trouble because almost like he thinks he should be in trouble. You know what I mean? There's
yeah,
a little bit of that going on here as well. And certainly every time his dad bails him out or he gets bailed out because of someone who wants something from his dad, not from him, he's just like, oh, I'm not my own man. I'm just in the shadow of my dad. And so he gets even more upset. And his dad's like, what do you mean? Like, I like later in the movie, he's like, I had you free, but then you went and killed an unarmed man. Like, are you stupid? It's like, what happened?
well, I mean, in this like this very next sequence, right? Because like Ed leaves the bar to go out on the town, and Lee comes back to find Davy chilling in the dark in a hotel
I'm so
room.
sorry. A really funny comment. Topaz Dude says, if Ed got caught with Ukrainian hookers, how many horses would that cost Lee?
At,
Quite a few.
at
I'm thinking
20, maybe
at
20.
least 20 horses. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, so
Ed wants
Dave,
a father, not a buddy. Exactly.
yes.
Exactly. But he's getting a really perverted mix of both,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. He's getting like the platoon commander who's just like too friendly with his guys. You know? Like
Yeah.
there's not enough respect because he's trying so hard to be, like one of the boys, but he's still like the way that he enforces his discipline is just breeding resentment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's like, "Oh, good luck finding a horse." Like, I know you'll like. In fact, I'm betting that you'll find all the horses you're looking for because he's like, I know what you're doing." And so Lee goes back to the place they're staying in town, the hotel or whatever it is, and he sees Davy sulking in the dark, and he's like, "What are you doing sulking in the dark like a little bitch?
What
Go
are you
out and have
living
a
in
good
a world
time."
of darkness? But turn some lights on in here. He's like, I
Ah,
need to be with my
daylight.
emotions.
And he's like, "Go out and have fun." I would have never been caught sulking in the dark when I was a young man. He's like, "You know what, Davey? I don't get you. I
Well,
want
yeah,
you to be
yeah,
more like
like
your
God, the
brother."
the
Like,
money thing, right? He goes, "I'll need some money," right? And he goes, "Oh, of course, here. I want you to have a good time. That's what money's for, right?" Which is like another telling kind of thing, right? He's just like, "Oh yeah, just take some money, go out and party with your brother, dude. Like, what's wrong with
yeah,
you? Like, yeah,
don't sit in the
yeah,
dark like a
yeah."
weirdo. I just don't get you, man.
Stop sitting in the dark and listening to My Chemical Romance, you fucking emo bitch. Like, go out and party and have some fun.
Yeah, man. Topaz Dude is requesting that we look at the second most liked review of this on Letterboxd. So I'm pulling up Letterboxd.
Oh, okay. You got it.
Popular reviews. I assume this is the second most liked one. Yes, there it is. Heartbreaking. So 5 stars and a heart. So that's a good review. Heartbreaking. We know we stand on the shoulders of degenerates, folks who had metal and did things so the West could progress, not directly, no, but grappled with morality among ever changing winds. Am I supposed to think this is good, or am I supposed to think this is pretentious wankery? I'll keep reading. They survived. They endured rugged conditions. They crawled out from the shadow cast by the people before them until they could make their own. Tragedy is when backbreaking work has created a wealthy return and reputation, and all of that has been misinterpreted by jealousy and youth, but also passed on clumsily. Maybe it was never foolproof. Maybe hubris and vanity always wait in the weeds, regardless of how hard we try. It's an amazing. See, okay, so this
The
is what annoys me.
poets, the poets of Letterboxd, yes, the William
Okay,
Shakespeare of
listen,
Letterboxd,
listen.
they call
He's
this man.
not completely off the mark
No, he's
about the
not.
theme,
He's
but this
kind of
is
right.
okay. So this is a general problem I have, and this is going to seem like a non sequitur, but I'll tie it back in, right? So I saw a review or it's like a tweet that was really popular when Long Legs came out, right? Where someone is like, Long Legs is about the shining like horror, like hiding in American domestic life, like hiding behind every door. Like essentially that the movie is about how like what seems like the nuclear family and like the sort of like center of American life is like corrupted and there's horror lying behind every door. And it's like, yeah, that's not what happens in the movie though. What happens in the movie is that there are like a couple like domestic horror situations that are all being controlled by Satan, who is mind controlling people, so people don't even have any agency over their actions. So this isn't actually a reflection or successful commentary on anything at all. Like really, like but it sounds nice. It sounds like something, but like so when we come back to this letterbox review, when people say stuff
That's
like
not the one he was talking
tragedy
about,
is,
by the way.
what'd you say?
That's not the one he was talking about,
Oh,
evidently.
but that's the second most popular one. No, not that one. Oh God. Okay. Well, okay? Well, I'm gonna finish my thoughts since we've started down this path. All right. So, when people say stuff like tragedy is when backbreaking work has created a wealthy return and reputation, and all of that has been misinterpreted by jealousy and youth, but also passed on clumsily. Maybe it was never foolproof. Maybe in hubris and vanity, always wait in the weeds, regardless of how hard we try. Like, that's not in the movie. You're just like I hate it when people extrapolate a situation in a movie or a theme in one story. It's like, this movie is saying that that's all society is. You know what I mean? That's a really common move, right? Or you might look at something like Gunman's Walk, and you might come away from Gunman's Walk if you're a stupid person, and no one here in the chat, obviously, just in general, and say that Gunman's Walk is about toxic masculinity, right? And it's about how like traditional ideas of what being a man is are toxic and lead to tragedy. And it's like, no, that's a stupid
Yeah,
thing to
that's not real.
say.
That's not what it's about.
That's
That's
not what
like
that's not what it's about. And even if it was,
it is
this
a
is
tragedy.
one story about one person. So when people extrapolate to like a broader social critique without any real reason to do so, it really annoys me. So that's the end of that tangent. But apparently I was reading the wrong review. Um, this
Topaz, if you'll tell us the name of
the
the
actual
review,
review you
like the
want me
name
to
of the
read?
review you would like to shout out, we would be more than happy to do so. Yeah.
Because that is the second most liked one. I didn't mess
Yeah,
that up,
that's
did I?
I don't know.
Popular reviews by yeah. Okay, well let us know. Anyway, that was
A little bit
hopefully
of
not a
yeah, hey,
complete.
you know what? That's no, I agree though. Like and also like the people who kind of write stuff like this on on Letterboxd, it's like okay, like come on, man. Like what are you? This is like arguing politics on Facebook. Like what are you doing? Like you're shouting into the void here. Like okay.
Yeah. Um.
Real quick, also,
Anyway,
Jay Jameson says he finally watched Atomic Blonde. People lied. It's not female James Bond done right. It's the same stuntman doing all the work that we usually see with lip service. It's the John Wick guy doing like kind of cool action stuff, but like in a little bit of a less believable way because she's not an old man. She's like, a very small woman beating up guys literally three times her size. Like, it's not a James Bond movie done right. Like no, it's not. It's not. It's absolutely
yeah.
not. The actual graphic novel is a far more interesting spy thriller in the vein of like your John le Carre's or le Carre's. The it the movie is kind of it's neat looking action slop. It is kind of the best way that I can put it. Um, I have a serious bone to pick with that one, just because I don't think I think there's a lot of interesting visuals, and I don't think that they did the source material justice at all. Because I think it could have been a really interesting story in the vein of a Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which might be one of the best spy thrillers ever made.
I really
Um,
like that movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a fucking incredible movie. And the graphic novel is far more like that, and it's a lot more interesting. The version that we got is John Wicked, and John Wick 2'd, I should say, because it's a lot less fun than the first one.
Anyway,
Yeah, back to
uh,
Gunman's Walk here first.
Gunman's Walk.
So
So
yeah, the money is for having a good time and going out and partying with your brother.
what's really interesting is that this really fits into like the complex, flawed character of Lee, right? Because he insists that his sons be really, independent, right? And self-reliant, but then he showers them with money to go have fun and go do things instead of like spending their own money or anything like that. He it's just like really it's just a lesson that he only thinks really ought to apply to him. That like you can help other people and you should help other people, but you can't accept help and he's got two sons, and then he just constantly gives them help and gives them advice and doesn't let them figure out things on their own and all that sort of stuff. And then he's like, "Oh, here, have some money, go have fun." Like he just kind of he's got like a weird
Yeah.
view of what generosity is and everything like that. Kind of rules for me, not for thee, sort of thing. Um, and so he tells him like, I wish you were more like your brother. And he's like, I don't mean that. And it's like, no, it's okay. I understand. I'm sorry to be such a disappointment to you. And then he leaves.
Ooh.
So he goes down to a casino where there's all sorts of gambling and
A
prostitutes, people
saloon, yeah,
carrying on.
prostitutes, and yeah, a good Thursday night as far as I'm concerned.
Everyone seems to be having a good time. Ed is at the piano with the guy who's normally at the piano, one assumes, and he's singing and he's carrying on and he's singing "I'm a Runaway," a song written for the movie that is just incredibly catchy. It gets stuck in your head all the time.
Yeah,
This is the one whose musical motif keeps reappearing in the score. It's a song is just kind of like a happy, jaunty Western tune about potential. And he's like, like I'm gonna like all the things I haven't done, all the places I haven't been, all the ladies I haven't kissed, all that sort of stuff. I'm a runaway, all that sort of stuff. He's singing a song, he's carrying on, and then he sees two fine ladies of the night dressed up in all these big feathery outfits, and he's like kissing both of them and carrying on and all sorts of stuff. He's making jokes with the pianist about like, oh, I'll pay you more for another chorus. And they're like, how many choruses do you, like implying essentially that they've been singing this song for quite a long time because
yes,
he's
yeah,
really drunk and he's just carrying on. And so Davy comes in, he's standing by the boxer police deputy who is like there to watch him. And he's like, hey, Davy, like, why don't you take care of your brother? And so he's gonna like go hang out with his brother, and the prostitutes are like, "Hey, Ed, where are you going?" He's like, "Oh, my brother here is like
little
he
brother's
needs."
tired. I got to tuck him in. And she goes, well, come on back afterward, and next time bring Lee, and we'll really have a ball. And that sets him off pretty bad. Immediately, the
Yeah, it's
mood
like everything's
turns.
better with Lee, isn't it? And then he shoves her. It's like,
Yeah,
whoa. And so they go outside, and Davy's like, "Oh, come on, Ed, let's just have a nice time or whatever." And he's like, "Oh, you got some money. Whose money is that?" And he's like, "Oh, it's Lee's money, isn't it?" And he's like, "I don't
yeah,
want Lee's money. He just sent you to look after me. I don't need to be looked after by him or you or anyone else." And so he shuns Davy. He's like, "Get the hell out of here." And then the deputy who's watching this comes over to him and he's like, Ed, let me give you a piece of unsolicited advice. Ed's like, oh, great, here we go. And he's like, I knew a guy. He wanted to be a boxer. He wanted to be a prize fighter, and he's just a little too slow. The other guy was just always a little bit, just a fraction of a second faster, you know. And so he can never really ascend to greatness because he's just always a little too slow. And he's like, and I think he's like the other guy was just always a little bit quicker. And I think your dad's a little bit quicker, maybe 20 years quicker, and you just can't make up that time.
yeah,
Essentially trying to tell him like stop trying to compete with your dad. It's not good for you. You won't be like he has all the years and wisdom and maturity on you. Like you're not going to beat him in that regard. So like stop trying to compete with him and just like implying that you should maybe just look at him like more like a role model instead of someone to compete against, right? But Lee doesn't want to hear it. Or sorry, Ed doesn't want to hear it.
yeah. I love this scene too because he's really funny. In this scene, like the way that he's drunk and kind of jovial, like that when he has the thing with like Lee, he's like, "Oh, Lee gave it to you. Yeah, well, you can just go on and get out of here. Like you and him, what's his name, Mowgli," and he like slaps him in the face. He's like, "I didn't mean to hit you, Mowgli," and then he like kind of comes back to it.
He
There's another
plays
point.
drunk really well,
There's
I would
another point where
say.
he's just like, "You listen here," and he puts his arm around Davy. He goes, "Oh, I can't tell you because he's here." So they turn around again. It's really fun.
It's funny.
Yeah,
Like, Ed is very charismatic, right? And one imagines that if he could be civilized and tamed and like raised properly, he would actually be a great man in a
yeah,
lot of ways. Like you get that feeling because there are a lot of things to like about Ed,
yeah.
actually. but he's just kind of it basically by the time we enter the story, it's almost too late for him. It's even said later by Lee, like, it's like, no, it's too late for you now. I think it was too late for you when you rolled Paul off the cliff. Like, I
Yeah.
see that now. It's just like, yeah, something happened there, and now it's like, you know, maybe if we were better, we could, but I don't think we can save you now. Eventually, it's too late. And that's part of the tragedy too. It's like Davey even mentions this later when he's talking to Klee. He's like, I don't even blame him all the way. He can't entirely help who he is. You know what I mean? Which is interesting. It totally makes sense from Davey to say that as well, right? Kevo says, "I be lurking." Hello,
Hello,
opinion
Kevin.
havers.
Topaz
Hello,
also, this is
welcome.
kind of fun. Speaking of apparently the first James Bond movie, this is according to Wikipedia. The producer's first choice for the director of Doctor No was Phil Carlson, who directed Gunman's Walk, but he asked for
Oh,
too high of a salary, so they decided to turn him down. Um, and he
that's funny.
never, evidently, never got a shot as he says, he never got a shot in the big leagues again. He did go on to to continue directing films like all the way into the 70s. So he was working, but
He directed
nothing.
Walking Tall. I've heard of that movie. I know they did a remake with The Rock
Yeah,
eventually.
yes, yes, he did. He also directed a couple of films like with like he went and did a spy movie, a spy comedy with Dean Martin.
Huh.
So like maybe trying to play catch up, like realizing, man, I screwed up on Doctor No a little bit. But he
Yeah.
kept working until 1975, and I think he probably when did
Well,
he
if
die?
if
He
his
died in
work on this movie,
82. So he
okay,
retired pretty, pretty happy. But yeah, he never got to make anything quite like, quite groundbreaking or blockbusting like Doctor
no.
No or anything like that afterward.
But his work in Gunman's Walk is really good, so I would definitely be interested in checking out some of his lesser known movies. He started his first directing credit was for a movie from 1944. So he's got quite a few under his belt, but none of them I recognize the names of, other than Walking Tall.
Yeah, well, and Kilroy was here, which I know from the
I
meme.
haven't heard of that. What's the meme?
It's one of the original. It's like the original, one of the original, like the oldest memes. Vonnegut mentions it a lot. Kilroy was here. It's like something that,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Because I remember that coming up in Slaughterhouse Five.
yeah, yeah.
What's the meme?
It was
Is
just
it
something that like people like soldiers in World War II started like drawing on walls and stuff. Was Kilroy was here? Yeah,
like Brooks was here from
yeah,
Shawshank?
or like Frodo
Interesting.
Lives from like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's interesting. Anyway, so after Ed goes off on his own, Davy walks by to people we have not been introduced to yet in the movie. A nice older woman, a nice older couple. Anyway, we're sitting on the porch and like, oh, Davy, there you are. A long time no see. People that live in town that he hasn't seen in a while, and they're like, oh, let me get a good look at you. I was like, oh, yep, you're still your mother's son.
Yeah,
That's a very important line,
yes,
right?
very much so. Yeah,
Yeah. That he looks a lot like his mother, that he acts a lot like his mother. It's almost like all of his dad went into Ed and all of his mom went into Davy, essentially.
yeah, and
And
real
he's
real
there.
quick too, because like in the earlier scene before they part ways, Georgius mentioned this. Uh, Ed tells Davy that he bought a claim and he's planning on striking out on his own in the morning. He's not gonna ride with
Yes.
Lee's name anymore. He's gonna go make a name for himself away from Lee Hackett. So
Yeah. And so Davy goes because he's looking for Clee and he wants to talk to her. Right. And so he's talked to this old couple that Clee is staying with. And then they call Clee down, like, Clee, there's a young man who wants to go on a walk with you. And so she comes out and he has a nice little romantic evening, day for night filmed walk with her, where basically he's like trying essentially to say that I'm not like my brother. She's like, I know you're not your brother, but you're still Lee Hackett's son. And he's like, but I don't want to be. Like, he sort of rejects his father and his, heritage and his place in this city because he feels like he doesn't belong in it. He feels like ashamed because he has, a sort of warped, biased view of like who his dad is essentially. He doesn't want anything to do with him anymore and he wants to marry her, right? So he wants to sort of like he wants to strike out on his own at the same time that Ed is, but in a different sort of way because he wants to marry her. And she's like, "Whoa, marriage? That's a lot. We haven't really said much to each other. That's very nice of you, but you know." So she's a little hesitant at first, and he tries to be like, like I'm not like them, essentially. And so, they have a nice little tender, intimate moment out that night and they find that Ed has been arrested. Lee comes by the sheriff's office and he's like, "What's that I hear about Ed being arrested?" And it's like, "We got him on all sorts of charges, for like disorderly conduct and like drunkenness in public, and for and then
Attempted. Yeah.
he
Nope,
says
she dropped that
attempted."
one.
Yeah, attempted. He doesn't finish the sentence and says, "Nope, she dropped that one," implying that he attempted to have sex with someone against their will, but she eventually dropped it. I think the implication is clear that like she dropped it because of who he is. You know, that sort of feels like the implication anyway. So his drunken and disorderly conduct has landed him in jail that night, and so he's in the jail and he's drunk and all that. And Lee comes to bail him out, and we can hear Ed from the other room, like, you're gonna let me out of here? You can't hold me in here forever, you fuckers. He doesn't say fuckers because it's a '50s movie, but you get the idea. And this is when he has the conversation with the sheriff, who I quite like the sheriff in this movie.
Yeah.
He's good. He's very competent and authoritative in what few scenes he has. And he's trying to be like, look, your son, he's reckless and he's causing problems and people aren't happy about it. He's like, he's just a kid being a kid. That should be, we were pretty wild when we were younger. You remember all the things we got into? I think he says, remember that 4th of July party that went all the way to the 5th, the 6th, the 7th? He's like, yeah, that was 20 years ago. Like times have changed. He's like, times have only changed because people have gotten soft. And it's just like, it's such a great argument because they're both right, and it's like,
It's like, yes, but also we're old fucking men now. Like, it's a little
yeah. And
different.
also, like, I don't know that your son is exactly because the bias that Lee has is that he thinks he excuses his son by being like, well, that's what I was like. And it's like, no, he's something else.
Yeah.
He's extra. And I don't think you're willing to see it, right?
Because
Because
like
you like aspects of him.
it's interesting because it's like, you played by the rules that existed at the time, right? Like, he's not doing that. He's playing by those old rules while the new rules are in place. Is kind of what the sheriff is saying, right? Like, there,
Yeah.
it's a really interesting argument. This is such a great scene.
One of the things I like it. So Topaz, dude, I think you're half right, right? It's like this scene is really good at showing how out of touch Lee is, trying to appeal to the past to get the sheriff to release his son for his crimes, right? It's half of that. That's half right because I think what Lee is also saying is like, oh, come on, when we were kids, we got into all sorts of trouble too, like, and like things were different, like they had a lower standard of justice at the time, but it's like from his perspective, it's like, and this is the scene where he says essentially that like, oh, a horse is no good if he doesn't buck the first time you try to put a saddle on him. He's trying to say like, yeah, like my son is, he's reckless, he's a little crazy, he gets into a little trouble, but that's just because he's a man and he has the capacity to like, actually do things as a man. You know what I mean? And like so like he just needs to like, grow up a little bit, but he's young, right? And so like they're both kind of half right, but the problem is that Lee, it's not so much that Lee is completely out of touch, it's just he's not really willing to recognize that Ed is a bit more dangerous than just a boy being a boy kind of thing. But I think, in this argument, when he's talking about how times are changing, it's like he does make some good points. It's not like, like there's the appeal to the past isn't completely out of touch because he is right that some things about the past are important to preserve and pass on, right? So like I don't know, it's just an interesting balance because I think it's with a lot of things in this movie, like when two people get into an argument, it's like, yeah, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And I think that's one of the things I find so interesting about the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, so so eventually he convinces the sheriff to like let him loose and like drop these charges, but basically he's just like, I think you guys should leave town. I think you should and you should, don't let this happen again kind of thing, because people are really getting fed up with your son and you. And like, I know we all have a lot of reasons to be grateful for you, but like, come on, like this is the last time we're gonna help you out. And so Ed comes out of the prison thinking like, I knew you were gonna let me go. And then he sees his dad and he's like, oh, it's because of you.
Oh, the sting, dude. When the sting
uh,
hits at that point, ah,
yeah,
God, it's so good. Ah,
yeah.
and yeah, it's because of you. And he's like, I don't need your help. I don't need any of this shit, right? Like, and he's, yeah, it's great. Yeah, the way that it just keeps
And
building,
the music's
right?
really
The
good too.
music is really
Yeah.
good, but the way that the tension just keeps building. And then the next scene after this is the one that we talked about earlier, where he goes to take his boots off, and Davy is like
Tries to
tries
help
to help
him.
him, and he it's like, no, don't like it's almost like he can kind of understand, right? Like what has happened with his son, right? Like why his son is
Hmm.
the way he is. But he's
Yeah.
he's just not able to articulate it or to comprehend it. So he acts out like, his own way, right?
Yeah.
It's there's someone mentioned earlier in the chat is like there's a lot to chew on with this movie, and it's like, yeah, and they just don't make them like this anymore, you know?
No. No, I feel like if this movie was made today, it would just be way less nuanced.
Yeah.
Even if like if someone tried to remake it today, I would stay so far away from that. I would never touch that with a 10-foot pole. I like the overarching idea that Lee bringing up things he did in the past to justify the present is no longer as effective as it seemingly used to be. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
for sure. And
absolutely.
like and it yeah, certainly. It's partly because times have changed and he's not growing up, and it's partly that like people are softening in a way that he doesn't approve of, and I think he has kind of a point. So it's an interesting mix of the two. And so um he tries to help him out, and he's like, I don't need your help. Like, he's like, well, I'm going to go get married to Cecily, by the way. And Sad's like,
The
fucking what?
fuck you are.
Yeah. And he starts walking towards him, and Davy's just kind of like backing away from him. He's like you're gonna marry a half breed, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna, yeah. He's being really timid about it, and and basically Lee is like, I won't have you making a fool out of me. Like, like this is an embarrassment to me and my legacy that you would marry, a half Indian woman. And he kind of interrupts him, Davy does, to say like, hey, without your shoes off, you're no taller than me. And then he's like, I think I'm gonna turn in for the night. Okay, bye. And then he closes the door. Like he gets one little dig in at his dad, but he can't really like stand on it. And then he kind of backs away timidly, which I find really funny.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Davy, like you're trying to stand up for yourself, but you're not like fully ready to do it yet. And he finally fully does at the very, very end, I would say. So that's a great scene for Davy. We're out at the ranch, and the stranger who helped get Ed, free, is like picking out the horses that he wants. Essentially, he's shopping for horses because he lied and those aren't his horses, but he's pretending they are. He's like, that one, that one. Oh, and that beautiful white mare over there, that one's mine too. And that's finally when Lee is like, wait a minute,
Wait a minute. But
what?
he's still,
There's no way
yeah,
that could be your horse.
yeah. And
And he,
Lee's helper, Lee's like buddy is just
right
like,
hand man, yeah.
yeah, that mare's never had a rope on her in her life. Like you did not catch that horse. Like you lying fuck.
Yeah. Well, then he's like, "Oh, what do you like that? Like, you think I'd lie about something like that? That may make me no better than a horse thief." And his right hand man's like, "Well, since you brought the subject up," and Lee stops him. He's like, "No, it's fine. That's your horse. If you're saying he's yours, then I believe you. The horse is yours." But then he's like, You planning to leave town after this? And he's like, yep, I'm just going to be on my way. And he's like,
Like,
see that you do that,
yeah,
essentially. Just like, okay, I know what you're doing. I'm not going to call you out on it because you helped get my son off of a murder charge. But it's like finally starting to dawn on him that that was a lie. And it's like things are going to start unraveling in his mind, right? But he doesn't want to call him a liar. And he does because the consequence might involve his son going to jail, right? So he's like, all right, just take the horses and get out of here. But like you can tell
yeah.
it's starting to weigh on him now.
And in
Um,
the immediate, so he takes the horses and he goes to get out. Davy and Ed have a bit of a confrontation, right? A similar sort of confrontation, in the hotel room because Ed has promised that he'll stay confined up there, before
Wait,
until
wait,
the.
wait, wait! Before
Sorry, go
before you
ahead.
get to it, just because there's a lot of really funny lines in this movie. So Davy's sitting in the chair in like the hotel room or the wherever they're staying, and Ed finally emerges and he's like, "Oh, are you finally up?" And he's like, "No, I'm still in there sleeping."
Yeah, the
he's so
classic.
he's so sassy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. But Davy reveals to Ed that he's planning on marrying Clee as well, and
Uh huh.
Ed reacts much the same way that Lee did. He threatens violence against him. He
Hmm.
threatens to beat him up. And Davy this is Davy's moment where he kind of has his I'm gonna stand up. I'm done being bullied by you two,
Hmm.
kind of thing. He says, yeah, what is it? He says, like, yeah, you can hit me, but I,
Well, so he pushes him over. He like knocks the legs out from under his chair and knocks him over. And then he's like, "Get up." And he's like, "No, that's like a cheap, childish trick." And he's like, "Get up." He's like, "Don't make me kick you." And he's like, "No, you won't kick me because then you'll have to kill me
yeah,
because it'll make me so mad that I think I'd try to kill you." And he's still lying on the ground, but he's basically like, you don't want to fight me because I'll kill you. And then Ed smiles, right? Because this is the language that Ed speaks.
yes,
This is the most he's ever liked his brother. You know what I mean? Like this is like, oh, there's a little fire in you anyway. Like I knew there was something in you, Like he's proud of him
yeah,
almost for saying that.
exactly,
You
yeah.
know, it's like, oh, it's so interesting. It's so interesting. He's like, you know what? He gains more respect for him as a result of doing that,
Yeah,
which
he
is
kind of
really,
like
really,
he still gives him like the brotherly sort. He's like, "Oh, get on up. You look like a guy who's riding wearing his saddle backwards." But you can tell that like something's changed between them. Like that
yes.
he respects him more now, and he decides like, "Oh, we're gonna go out. Let's go out." Put on the gun. He starts Ed starts putting on
Like,
the
hey, we're
gun.
not supposed to leave. You're supposed to stay here. And he's like, yeah, who cares?
Yeah, yeah, well,
we're,
fuck it,
we're our own men.
fuck him.
Yeah. And then he looks out the window.
Yes,
Uh-oh. And he sees the stranger strolling through town with his horses on his way out. And oh my gosh, there's the white mare. And Ed's like, holy shit, he's stealing your mare. And then he goes out to confront him. And Davy's like, Ed, like, stop it, Ed. And so he goes down there and he sees him and he goes like, hey, like, what are you doing? He's like, hey, I think you're mistaken. Like that white mare doesn't go. Like you can
yeah,
take all your other horses, but that one's not yours. And he's like, oh yeah, says who? And he goes, or he didn't say says who. He says like, oh, on who say so? And he's like, on mine or something like that. I can't remember the
yeah,
exact
something like
wordage.
either way, it's something
He's
similar.
like,
But he's
I
just
I
like,
think it's because I said so. That's why. That's the
yeah,
kind of thing. And he goes, he's like, so, and he's like, listen, he's like, so you won't mind. Ed says, oh, so you won't mind if I slip the lead off and just take this horse. And he goes like, no, I wouldn't do that. I got to like, that's my horse and I have a bill of sale to prove it. And he reaches into his jacket, but instead of pulling out a bill of sale, he pulls out a gun. Which is like, it was such a great
yeah,
little
that's a great,
reveal. It's
that's,
kind of, it's
yeah,
like the full reveal that he is just a scummy thief. You know what I mean? We already knew it, but it's like here we really see his true colors, essentially, you could say, this guy. And so he pulls out the gun. He's like, now step away. And he's like, all right, well, I guess there's no use arguing with you. And so Ed sort of starts to walk away. And then he sort of jumps down like onto the steps of the saloon. And then the guy shoots at him first. Ed turns around and shoots back, shoots the gun out of his hand. He drops it. Oh, and hold on, I want to get the exact line he says
Mister,
because it's
you made
cold
a
as fuck.
mistake. pulling that gun.
Yeah, yeah, because it's the shot with the that we're seeing in the thumbnail and in the very beginning of the stream. And so he, like I said, he jumps to the side. The other guy shoots first. He shoots the gun out of his hand. He drops it, kind of wounded. He stands up, very dramatic, and then very kind of coldly, he's like, "Mister, you made a mistake in pulling that gun." And then he shoots him again. And he falls off the horse, and everyone kind of like gasps in shock, and he falls dead to the ground. The music swells. It's great. And then some of the horses ride off, and then the guy's just kind of like collapses to the ground, and he goes like, "Come on, everyone, I'm buying everyone drinks." And then he goes into the saloon. The like, "Come on, I'll buy everyone drinks" in the immediate aftermath of shooting a man dead in the street is so
It's
cold.
cold as shit,
Oh,
dude.
it's
Yeah.
so good. It's man, I love that moment so much because it's like Jesus Christ, man. Like, come on, I'm buying everyone drinks, and everyone else is just standing there like, holy shit, he just killed a guy, right? And so, in terms of the escalation, right, he rode that guy off the cliff. He didn't like directly murder him, but he basically murdered him,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And then,
yeah. I mean, he did right. Like,
exactly.
yeah. He.
You know what I mean,
Yeah.
though. And we're in terms of ramping it up. This guy did shoot first, but he shot the gun out of his hand,
He
and so he
disarmed
was
him, so he didn't
unarmed.
have to. Yeah.
He didn't have to kill him, but he killed him anyway in front of everyone in the middle of the street. So it's like we're ramping things up, right? And it's going to get even worse. But there's a really nice escalation to it. Is I guess what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So he goes into the saloon and the bartender's there. The bar's empty because it's probably the morning,
It,
right?
it, it is the morning. Like he was
Yeah.
just having coffee in the room upstairs.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably like 9 or 10 a.m. And he comes in, he's like, "Come on, set them up for everybody." And the guy looks around, he's like, "I said set them up for everybody." So he's pulling out all the
I
whiskey
said set him
bottles.
up for everybody. They'll be here. He gets like yeah. He
They're
gets
coming. He gets really aggressive and he's like, "Come on, where's everyone? I said I was buying drinks." And the guy goes, "Yeah, oh, that must be it. They must not have heard you. I'll go tell them. I'll go give them a formal, an invite." And then Ed says, like, "Ah, yeah, real formal, like nothing like a good formal invitation to a wedding, a funeral, or a death, or a killing," I think he says.
yeah.
Yeah. And so he's sitting in the bar waiting for everyone to come in and get drinks with him, which was never going to
It
happen.
was never gonna
And then
happen, but like you can kind of understand because like that's what Lee did, what Lee does,
yeah,
right?
that's what
Yeah.
he thinks Lee was,
Yeah.
essentially. The guy who killed people and then everyone celebrated him for it.
Yeah.
So, in his twisted vision of things, he killed a horse thief who tried to kill him first. And so he thinks everyone will be like, "Wow, what a hero." And then they're not. They're not like that
Yeah.
at all,
Exactly.
actually. They're actually rather shocked by that because what he seems to be neglecting, that he seems to see no difference. He seems to think that it's not meaningful that he had disarmed the guy and didn't need to kill him and then killed him anyway. And so it's like, because that's just what he thinks his dad is like. And eventually we'll get a great scene talking about that. Um, Outside, the sheriff is like, "Okay, get him off the street, get everyone out of here. I'm gonna go outside and deal with Ed, get his gun." So the sheriff goes inside, talk to him, and he's like, "Ed, I'm gonna need you to give me that gun." He's like, "No, I'm not giving you my gun." He's like, "Okay, fine. I'm gonna come back, and I'm gonna come back with
With my
other people,
shotgun. Yeah.
my
Um,
shotgun, essentially." Yeah,
Yeah, and he basically is just like, all right, yeah, you can. Like, he kind of dares him, you know, go ahead, start shooting. Like, yeah, shoot me in the back. Go ahead.
but
Which
just
is,
a nice little character detail for the sheriff as well. The sheriff comes in and he's like, "Why'd you shoot him?" He's like, I killed a horse thief, and you want to arrest me for it? What the hell?" And he's like, "Well, if he was a horse thief, why was he parading the horses through town?" I mean, he's like asking reasonable questions. I like the sheriff. I think he's good in this,
yeah,
and that he's starting to piece together, as a lot of people are, that this is probably related to what happened with Paul,
yes.
right? Like everyone's starting to go like, "Wait, why did he kill the guy who
The guy who
testified in his
testified in
defense?"
favor of him, yeah. At the last
Yeah,
second, right before he was, yeah, right before he was gonna be, gonna have to stand for a murder charge.
yeah. So
Exactly.
people are starting to question that. Lee shows up, and now the sheriff has his shotgun, and he's got his backup, and he's like, "Oh no, you're not going to take my son in." And he's like, Lee, I tried to go in there and take his gun from him, and he wouldn't give it to me. What do you want me to do?" And he's like, "Okay, fine. I understand. I'll go get his gun." So Lee goes in, and he comes in, and Ed rather coldly is like, "Have a drink," and he's like, "You know what? I think I need one." So he takes a drink from the bar, and it's like, and then he tries to yell at him, but I just love Tab Hunter's performance here. He's so good. Like he's very like cold. Like I don't know. He communicates the kind of like boiling rage inside of him
Yeah,
constantly really well. It's really good.
it is really impressive. Yeah, it's a great performance, great delivery. Um,
Yeah. But the essence of this conflict in this scene is that Ed is like, you let him steal from you. You knew that mare wasn't his, and you just let him walk away with it. You let him walk all over you like you're a coward or whatever. And Lee's like, I was trying to help you. Like this is for you, like because you would be in prison for murder if I didn't do that. He's like, well, I didn't want any of your help, right? That's the movie in a nutshell, essentially. And he tries to get him to give him the gun, and he refuses to give it to him. He's just like,
yeah,
no, I'm not.
he's like, no, I'm not gonna do it. Yeah, well, but like, yeah, then the sheriff ends up coming in, right? And
Wait,
like,
wait, 'cause there's an important little detail here. So he says, like, give me your gun. He's like, I'm not giving my gun to you or anyone else. And he's like, I'm giving you a direct order. So
yeah,
he's trying to pull the I'm your father card, but it's a little late for that. And so he goes, like, you can go to hell. And Lee slaps him and then takes his gun from him. And he's like, don't talk to your father that way. And it's like, oh, now you're his dad. You know?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, a direct order is a really interesting line too, right? Like
Yeah, like you said, it's a like he's his
like his
supervisor or
commanding
like his
officer.
commanding officer. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, and so he does that, and he basically he gives him sort of the same I guess ultimatum, right? It's just like, if it was anybody else, I wouldn't let. Don't you ever try that on me again. He kind of gives him the same sort of speech that Lee gave him earlier when he shot the can before he had time to get out of the way. Right? It's just like
Yeah.
if you were anybody else, I would have drilled you dead center. And here he's just like, that's the last time I'm ever gonna let you do that. Right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like you even ever try it again, right? And then the sheriff comes
Mhm.
in and goes, "You remember, sheriff, you didn't take me in, he did." And he follows
God,
him out.
he's such a
It's
baby about that.
Yeah,
But it's so good. He's just like, I want it known that, he took me in, not you. I wouldn't have let you take me in. And then later at the very end of the movie, he's gonna be like, oh, they followed me. Like they must have followed your trail, not
yeah,
mine.
exactly. It's your trail they followed, but it's like it's almost like he's projecting his own like insecurity against his father onto the sheriff, right? He's just like, yeah, the
Yeah.
sheriff would be just as wounded if I told him like, oh, you didn't do it. It was my father who did, right? Like, don't you feel bad living in the shadow of Lee Hackett? Because I sure do. It's like basically what he's saying there, which is just yeah, just great, just great character work. So the sheriff leads him out, and Davy comes in to talk with Lee, and they find out essentially that they find out, or yeah, Davy comes in to talk with Lee, and they find out that Severs is not dead. The guy who was shot, he's not dead, but he is critically wounded. He'll probably die, but they might be able to talk to him before he passes, right? Which is
Yeah.
gonna be big because if they go and ask him, well, why did he shoot you?
Yeah. We might reveal something because Davy's like, people are starting to put it together already.
Yeah,
That these two things might be connected.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
then this is when Davy tells him, like, he shot the gun, like, well, okay, because, sorry, Lee is like, well, he had a gun and he shot first. And Davy's like, yeah, he shot the gun out of his hand and then he shot him again. He was unarmed. And then I love Lee's response here. He's like, what are you, the chief witness for the prosecution? And he's like, no, I'm just like that's what happened. He's like, whose side are you even on? Essentially, is what this conflict turns into. Is like There's a specific line I want. Hold on, what does he say? Oh, he says, if that girl's brother means more to you than your own, this is the time to say it. He's like, I'm not saying that. He's like, well, you're acting like it. You know, he
Yeah.
thinks that Davy has essentially betrayed him and his family. So this is like, okay, now that Lee actually knows and suspects that Ed has actually killed two people, that didn't that the first one probably wasn't an accident, and this one he didn't need to shoot him because he had already disarmed him, right? Now the whole like now things are starting to crumble, and so he's sort of defaulted to a sense of like, well, you got to protect your family, you know what I mean? Which is a very common thing for people to do, where they're like, like I don't really care. I still got to protect my son, right? He's family. And then he looks at Davy, and this is like I don't. He's like, oh, like my son. Hold on. There's another line he says that's really really important.
Oh, yeah. One son, oh God, what is it? One son, something. The other mooning over a half breed. I don't know which shames me more.
Yes, that's the big line.
Yeah. Oh, fuck.
Because that one hits really hard, right? Because Davey immediately after this is going to be like, no, I'm not going to help you anymore. I'm going off on my own with Klee, essentially. Because basically, what he's just heard from his father is like, the fact that you are not loyal to this family, I treat with almost equal disdain as to Ed killing people.
Yeah.
And so obviously Davey's not going to like that, but Ali is very much worked up about this, and he sees Davey as disloyal, essentially. Uh, but he's really not reacting well to what he's learned about Ed recently, and so he says something rather cruel, casually here to Davey. It's gonna it's a pretty big scene. So now he's being thrown in jail, and Ed is still cracking jokes, man. They take his belt, obviously his gun and everything from him. They put him in the jail. He's like, "What about my spurs? Aren't you afraid I'm gonna dig a hole out of here?"
Yeah, aren't you worried I'll dig my way out? And the sheriff
Yeah,
hits him with, like, he's like, son, I quit worrying about you and I went for my shotgun, which is another
good.
banger of a line.
So many good lines, so many bangers. Yeah,
There's gonna be a couple more too in the next scene where, like, because
yeah,
they go to
yeah.
interview the shooting victim, because God, oh my God, the one where like so when they walk in and ask how he's doing, and the doctor says, "I never will understand why so many miracles are wasted on the undeserving."
Yeah, he's fine.
He's fine. It's holy shit, what a good line, right?
Yeah,
And then so like the doctor basically said, "Nope, he's not strong enough to talk. We can't talk with him. You can't talk with him. You can't interview him now. You got to go. And I want to drink, and I only drink alone. So get the fuck out."
get the fuck
Basically,
out of here. Go on, get out. Go, 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 go. And they're like, "Will you let us know when he is okay?" He's like, "Yes, I'll put." What does he say? Like, I'll put
I'll put two
two.
lamp. I'll put a lamp in the window. One if by land, two if by sea.
Yeah, great line. But then we realize that that's cover for Lee, who was already at the doctor's house. And so the doctor's covering for him. And Lee goes in to talk with Mr. Severs. And Severs isn't really talking because he's had a bullet through the lung, but he's awake enough to understand what Lee is saying. And in short, Lee is like, now, if you're awake long enough, if you live long enough for them to question you, like, what's it going to be? He basically strikes a deal with him. He bribes
Yeah.
him essentially
Well,
into
bribes and
keeping.
or threatens, right? Like he's
Well, yeah, the bribe is explicit. The threat is more implicit.
yes.
But basically, he's like, you know, if you do what I say, I'll let you walk out of here. You'll keep your horses and everything like that, and you'll get to live essentially. Now, and there's a great moment where he's like, now, can you shake your head once that you agree, or are you a fool enough? No, can you nod your head
You
once to
strong
show that
enough to
you?
nod your head once, or nod your head yes, or fool enough to shake your head no.
That's the one.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yes,
yeah.
another great line, another banger line. But then as he's about to walk out after Mr.
I was
Severs has
hoping you were gonna
agreed
say it. Yeah, yeah.
to the deal, he says like, "Oh, looks like I missed my calling as a doctor. I just saved your life, Mr. Severs." And yeah, it's good.
Absolute. Like, yeah,
It's really
it's
good.
really heating up. It's really heating up right here, man.
Oh yeah.
It's good stuff.
Bryce Mwenda says, small critique of the film. I wish Davy got one more scene with his brother while he was in his cell. It's not necessary, but I thought a little bit was missing on that front. I could see that.
Yeah.
I definitely think the movie's like final scene between them is where like Davy finally stands up for himself a little bit and he earns actually a little bit of respect from his brother. Like they almost solve their disagreements a little bit there. You know what I mean? Because he gets really mad at him and threatens to fight Davy because he's going to marry, a stinking Sue. And then he stands up for himself and he's like, you know what, you're all right. And so it's like, oh, I guess they're fine now. you know?
Yeah.
And then I guess the sort of last note on Davy's opinion of Ed is when he talks to Clee. And he's like, you know what? I don't even really fully blame him exactly because he can't like he's not entirely in control of that he is the way he is essentially, and that's Davy's perspective. But I could totally see wanting a final scene between the two of them. I could see that, but I
Yeah.
think it works well without it as well. So he threatens Mr. Severs and basically secures uh the things that he's not going to testify against Ed in a way that will result in him dying essentially. So he's solved the problem as far as he's concerned. On his way out, the doctor's like, I don't especially like that you've made me party to a conspiracy, but if you can live with your conscience, I guess I can too. By the way,
He's,
here's a
it's
collection.
even better than that. He says, if you can live with your conscience, I guess I can get along well enough with mine.
Yeah,
Which,
exactly.
yeah, but yeah, and then what is it? He's got the slugs, right? This is the scene where he shows Lee the collection of slugs from
From the
the men
bullet.
that he's killed, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I held on to them because I thought they might have some historic significance. I'm not interested in starting another collection for your son.
Yes. Great line. Great little moment. And so then he leaves the doctor. They go back to, well, he doesn't go back to, but the sheriff goes back to the prison and he's there. And they discover that Ed is trying to hang himself in the prison. Oh, wait, it's a trap. Ed set a trap for them and then grabs the gun from the sheriff, hits the sheriff across the face with the gun, like points the gun to the belly of the deputy, kind of like forces his way out of the prison cell into the main office, throws the guy into the back room, grabs, like a little holster for the gun, and then the deputy comes back out to confront him and to trying to get him to stop, and he shoots the deputy dead with the pistol. We will eventually learn that the deputy was unarmed. So he pretends to hang himself in order to like get a ruse for the sheriff to break into the cell, and then he surprises him, steals his gun, forces his way out of the prison, but not before killing the unarmed deputy. Now he's on the loose. Uh-oh. The sheriff comes out and he's like, I'm putting together a posse to go find this guy. Any able-bodied men and all that sort of stuff. Well, the other thing that's particularly dramatic is the deputy stumbles out of the prison cell and everyone's gathered around in the street and they all kind of like see him die, essentially.
Yeah,
That's pretty brutal.
yeah.
That's pretty brutal because like
He wasn't
everyone
even
sees it
armed.
happen.
It's like, yeah,
Wasn't even
yeah.
armed.
And
Yep.
of course, the first ones to volunteer for posse duty are the Indians whose blood brother he
Yep.
killed earlier in the movie.
Yep.
So
Understandable.
yeah,
And then Lee is like, well, we got to find him before the posse does. Davey, come on, we got to go get him. And Davey's like, I'm not doing that.
well, hey, fuck that, bro.
Yeah.
I can't even shoot a bottle. Yeah, but that's the moment where he kind of just says like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he goes, all right, well, if you ever fine then, if you ever come to the ranch, you and your wife, have a good life. But if you ever come back to my ranch, I'll horsewhip you. And he leaves, right? And we get a couple
hmm
great shots of Ed, setting out over the wilderness, and then Lee's
Really
right
quick,
behind him on the trail, right?
really quick, because so this is the big scene for Davey, right? This is the big him standing up for himself scene. His dad's like, "Come on, we got to go find him for the posse does." He's like, "No, I'm not doing that." And he's like, "What the hell do you mean?" He's like, "Look, it's time you face the facts. Ed's beyond saving by you, by me, by anybody." Right? Like that's just kind of like, look, Dad, it's too late for him.
Yeah,
Like you got to let the law take care of this. I'm not going to thwart the law with you. He needs to like we can't save him. It's too late.
Yeah, exactly. And
And he
that
says, "Are you coming with me or not?" And he says, "No." And it's like, and then so and the way it's framed is really nice because you have Davy in the center of the frame, you have Lee off to the left, and you have Clee behind him to the right. So he's dead center, middle of the frame, like no, standing up for myself now. And he does, and he doesn't back away like he did in the hotel room the night before. He stands on business, as you might say, and he's like, "Fine, you stay with your squaw,"
yeah,
and he
exactly.
leaves.
Oh,
Oh, and it's even better because then he says he turns to Clee and he says, "You can have him. You're welcome to him." And then, like you mentioned, he's like, "If you ever set foot on my land again, I'll horsewhip you." And so he goes off on his own to find Lee. They're going through the wilderness. There are a lot of shots reminiscent of like the places they were earlier on the horse drive. So we're like revisiting some of those locations in a new context. Pretty nice, beautiful, beautiful Arizona wilderness. Uh, Playing as Wyoming, but I'm 90% sure it's Arizona. And he chases them over a long way. Eventually, there's like like a hill with a bunch of brush and rocks and boulders on the top, where Ed is hiding, and Lee manages to get up there, and he finds Ed with a gun pointed at him. And he's like, "Get off that horse!" Essentially, he threatens him,
yeah.
and then they get into the big argument. Now, there's a lot of great dialogue here, so I want to go through it. But basically, there's a little bit of a ticking clock because the posse's like hot on their trail, essentially, right? But
Yeah,
this is the
we've
final
seen that
confrontation.
the two Indians who are adept at reading sign, right? As they said earlier, they figure out which way he's gone, and they lead the group with him, right? So
Yeah, Georges Rex makes a good point that there are a lot of movies with this sort of theme, like the gunslinger saves the town or helps found the town, but like can't live in it.
oh,
You know what I
it's a
mean? Like,
classic heroes kind of. I mean, like the the heroic myth is pretty much founded on this idea that like you go on the adventure to retrieve the fire for the people, right? But like by the time you return, you don't recognize the world, right, anymore. It loses its value for you. That's
there are
a pretty.
certainly a lot of stories that are like that. Obviously, there's a little bit of that in Frodo's story as well,
Oh
only
yeah,
that
yeah,
like
yeah.
he's too changed by it. But there are certainly a lot of stories. It's almost like he is he's the frontier man, and the frontier is like obviously like right on the knife's edge of like the chaos of the wilderness and like the edge of civilization, right? And he kind of helps like carve civilization out of the wilderness essentially. So he's kind of like a figure who's like on the line. He's like like almost like a liminal figure, right? He's like on the margin, right, of wilderness and civilization. And so he helps allow civilization to exist, but he's like a little too wild to exist in it once it's formed. You know what I mean? And like this actually falls a lot. There are a lot of superhero stories that are like this as well, where it's like the superhero is an outlier figure who can't quite. He isn't really normal, but like is like a marginal figure who helps like protect and defend or create, like the normal and the good by being an outlier figure who like exists on the margins to defend it. And this is like there's some broadly similar things, right? Where like people like him are necessary to create civilization, but then civilization can get to a certain point where they think rightly and wrongly that he doesn't fit in it anymore. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there's something a little tragic about that, which is interesting. But we're going to get into essentially the difference between Ed and Lee here. It's like this is the whole movie boils down to, this scene essentially. So he's trying to help him, right? And he tells him like, "Look, like you killed an unarmed man. You like we had you free. Why'd you do that? Like I'm here to help you." And he's like, "When are you gonna get it through your head? I don't need your help. I don't want your help."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
And this is when he's like, "I don't need your help anymore. For now, I'm going my own way, and my name is going to be even bigger than yours ever was. I'm going to make a name for myself." And he's like, "What? As a gunslinger?" He's like, "You think killing people or like wielding a gun is all I. You think a gun is all I ever had to be proud of?" And he goes, "What else?" And it's like, yeah, there it is. That's the movie in a nutshell,
Yeah,
essentially. That he has raised a son who inadvertently has come to believe that all Lee is was a gun who killed people. You know what I mean? And it's like you're missing the story, man. He's like, if you think that's all I was, then you had the wrong man for a father. And he's like, I never had a father. And he's like, come on, like,
yeah.
like
That's a
I tried.
God. That hits hard, man. When it happens to,
Yeah.
I never had a
Yeah.
father.
And he's like, look, like I know I wasn't the best, but I tried. You know what I mean? Like I tried. What's wrong with a man wanting his son to be like him, to act like him, and to be, all that sort of stuff. Like, what's wrong with that? And he's like, you didn't want a son, you wanted a shadow. Only you never wanted the shadow to get bigger than you, or else how would you know it's the shadow, right? And
Yeah,
that's basically the final line of the argument. So, it becomes quite clear that Ed thinks all Lee is the guy who killed a bunch of people and got a bunch of acclaim and fame for it. And like all the context is gone. You know what I mean? All the like, killing people in war versus just like killing unarmed people who get in your way kind of thing. None of those differences have really landed for Ed. He has not been given the proper sort of like moral and ethical framework to understand what the good things about Lee are. He's just taken all of the surface level things and all the worst things about him essentially, and he's tried to be better at him in all of those because he just wants to be his own man. He wants to be a killer and all that sort of stuff. And he's like, and I like it when Lee says, like, I mean, what's wrong with wanting your son to be like you? Like, this is the most vulnerable he's been up until this point. Like, come on, like, is there really something wrong with that? And it's like you can really empathize with him because that's what he thinks he did,
yeah,
right? He's like, that's all. Like, I just wanted you to be like me, and from it's not the most accurate thing ever, but from Ed's perspective, he's like, no, like, I'm your shadow and you never wanted me to be better than you. And it's like, that's not really true, but that totally makes sense from Ed's perspective, like that's how he sees it essentially. And it's really heartbreaking in a really interesting way
yeah.
that it's come to that. And then the posse is arriving, and Ed says like, "Ah, they followed your trail, not mine, by the way," because he can't let it go. He's
Like,
like, "No,
yeah,
I'm better than you. I'm better than you. I'm better than you."
they never would have
And
found me if it wasn't for you. Yeah,
mhm,
yeah. And so, but he demands Lee's gun in this moment, right? He's like, "No, I'm gonna need that gun, and I'm either gonna, I'm not asking twice, right? Like, you give me the gun,
yeah,
yeah." And he says, "No, Ed, I don't want to see you hanged, but I'll kill you before I let you kill another man."
yeah. And and then Ed's like, "Ooh, will you now?" Like, he's excited by that. He almost like gets off on it. So like Lee starts to take off his gloves,
He's like, "Oh,
and
I've always
Ed
wondered. Let's see, here's our
I've
real
always
quick
wondered
draw."
who was faster in a quick draw, and then they do the quick draw, and Lee wins. He shoots him dead center, and so Ed collapses to the ground and kind of rolls over, and there's this fucking great shot of like the big blue sky behind them, and then in the foreground,
Yeah,
like Ed is laying on the ground, and Lee kind of slowly walks over, and the music has this sort of like really interesting mix of like an atonal sort of like 20th century orchestral atmosphere, and then the whistled "I'm a Runaway" tune over top of it, really slow and haunting as he walks over to Ed and sort of like holds his body and like looks away and like tries not to cry. And then silently the members of the posse sort of like walk in and see what's happened and just kind of stand there silently. It's really, really good.
yeah,
It's so unbelievably good. It's such a great like final argument confrontation scene where like we really get to see how hard it is hit Lee that Ed learned all the wrong lessons from him, and that he really is beyond saving now, and he just kind of has to deal with the reality of that, and so he has to kill his own son.
yeah. Bryce Mwenda points out that it the pose is very similar to that of the painting Ivan the Terrible and his son Ivan. After Ivan, which depicts this is the Wikipedia entry depicts the grief-stricken Russian Tsar Ivan the Terrible cradling his dying son shortly after
Mhm.
Ivan the Terrible had dealt a fatal blow to his son's head in a fit of anger, which is, I mean, it's not quite a one-to-one
No, but
translation,
this
but it
there's
does,
some
yeah, there's some
similarities there.
similarity
Yeah,
there. It's
absolutely.
really fascinating. Yeah,
Kinda cradles, like, the upper part of his body and just kinda, like, holds onto it, and then he kinda looks away to try and avoid crying. Yeah.
yeah.
It's really, really good. It's pretty powerful, but that's not it. That's the climax, but we're not quite done because the single best scene in the movie is coming up. Oh god, I love it so much,
What a
man.
what a fucking like you talk about sticking the landing, man.
Yes, this movie sticks the landing. Absolutely, it does. So we dissolve away from that. We're back into town. You know, the police, everyone's coming, and Davy is standing there next to Clee, and he sees Lee walking towards them. And there's this great moment where he doesn't know what's coming, he doesn't know what happened. So Davy kind of stands in front of Clee to protect her, and Lee walks over. And I want to get the exact line right because it's the last line of the movie, and it's really, really good.
He says, "If you and your young lady."
No, he says, "Okay, like I'm taking your brother's body back home. If you and your young lady wouldn't mind accompanying me, I would greatly appreciate it." So, all right. So why is that so great? Because okay, so he says that, and then there's a pause, and then
Well, because
he
Davy and Clee
bursts into
look at each
tears.
other like, I don't know.
Yeah,
And
and then he
yeah,
bursts into tears. Like he like finally cries. He finally like has a moment of vulnerability and finally like lets the weight of what happened affect him. He starts crying, and so they go to comfort him, and then they sort of walk with him, you know, off into the distance as as the camera sort of cranes up, and the music swells into this big finale, and then it, you know, cuts to the end credits. The end. That's how the movie ends. Now, great ending, fantastic ending. Let's talk about why. So, you know, just it's so economical in terms of the writing. He comes back, and the last thing he says is like, "I'm taking your brother's body back home." It's like, oh, that's such an interesting and rather blunt and almost nonchalant way of describing what happened. He doesn't say what happened. It's just like, we're taking his body back home. If you and your, instead of calling her a half breed or a squaw or whatever else, he says young lady, so that's obviously a change for him. It's like, if you and your young lady would accompany me, I would greatly appreciate it. And he's asking for help.
yeah,
He's willing to be vulnerable and he's willing to ask for help. And
and
it's like,
yeah,
yeah, that's. And then he like finally, you know, cries, and I'm watching it. I'm trying not to cry. Can't. It's just like every time. It's so good, man.
yeah.
It's so unbelievably good. And the way the music swells as the camera cranes up, it's just beautiful. Beautiful.
That yeah. He acknowledges her as family by the end, so he's kind of he's gotten over that. He asks for help. He realizes his mistake, and he's made
Realizes his mistake. He realizes that Davy was not being disloyal, but just that he had come to terms with the reality of who Ed is sooner and was actually standing up for himself. So he has a bit more respect for him
yeah,
as a result, you know, and he wants to respect him, and he's finally willing to just ask for help, which is something he is like ideologically possessed against doing, you know?
yeah. It's it's
It's so
so
good.
good. It's
And
so good,
it's
and it
tragic and heartbreaking that he like has to kill his own son, you know, and you feel really bad for him. Obviously, he was not a great dad and he made a lot of big mistakes and stuff like that. But a lot of the things that led to the way Ed is are like not exactly his fault. You can totally like empathize with a lot of the things he did, and just sort of like the fact that he wanted his son to be more like him in a world that was becoming less like him, and so he was willing to overlook signs that he had some real problems until it was too late. And like by the time he finds out that he killed the guy, that he rode Paul off the cliff, and that he killed Mr. Severs, like uh when he didn't need to, for example, it's like it's too late for Ed. by the time he fully understands the picture, it's like it's almost too late to do anything about it. And so he just kind of defaults to like a tribal sort of I got to protect my family sort of thing. But then, you know, that can't hold anymore. And he sort of has to come to terms with the fact that like no, Ed has like a real deep abiding hatred and resentment of his own father. He's got some real issues, and that like it's too late for him because one of the final things Ed says is that like, you know, when those guys come up the hill, like that'll be like he's like enjoying and looking forward to those lawmen coming over the hill so he can shoot as many as he can. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's too far gone. It's like, what do you do? And then when he challenges them essentially to a little duel at the end, Ed is like overjoyed at the prospect. It's like, Jesus, that's how many things had to have gone wrong for that to happen? Where he's like, oh, I always wanted to see who was faster. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ, man. this is a this is like it's a heavy, tragic, like complex little story with a lot of really great characters and a lot of like really interesting themes to think about. I wouldn't describe it as particularly like preachy or didactic. It's just like, take a look at this.
Yeah.
You make up your own mind about all this shit. It just feels very thoughtful and well crafted and shockingly moving for a movie that I just happened to randomly find on a free like
Roku
Western
service.
Roku channel, which is mostly filled with crap that like you can buy really cheap because it's not very good. And here's this little gem. Here's this little diamond in the rough. Like, what are you doing here? Why is no one talking about you? Why is Quentin Tarantino the only person who's seen this? I don't
That's
know, man.
dude, that's
I
crazy.
love this
Jen
movie.
just pointed out in the chat that the actress who played Clee was married to Bing Crosby.
I did not know that. That is an interesting detail.
Yeah. Oedipus adjacent, Shakespeare-esque but tragic. Yeah, this is a very sophisticated. It's a great way of putting it, Jay. Jay, it's a very sophisticated movie, and it's just like there's a lot. It's very simple on the surface, but the more you talk about it, the more you think about it, the more you dig into it. There's just so much at work. It's really tightly written and well
Yeah.
performed, well shot. There's so much to like about it. It's a really underrated masterpiece. I mean, like I found a list of the top movies of the year in 1958, and this was like number 59 on that list. It was like, yeah, it's like, I mean, it just kind of flew under the radar. Um, low budget, kind of a little western with a couple of, one bigger name in Van Heflin, but a couple of smaller, up and
But
coming
even then, a lot of
stars.
people don't know him by name these
Yeah.
days. You
No,
know,
yeah. No, I mean, like,
you know, it's been described as biblical in the chat already. Yeah, I definitely biblical and Shakespearean in a lot of ways. Not necessarily. I mean, I was going to say not necessarily in the language, but a lot of the dialogue is really good. It's it's not like Shakespearean in terms of heightened language, but the dialogue is like very, very well crafted. There's so many lines where you hear them said, and you're like, "Ah, that's great." That's the perfect line. Matthew Leach, thank you very much for the super chat. Says, when you guys returning to the Disney arc, I miss it. Well, soon. We'll come back to that
soon.
question
Well,
in a
yeah, we'll come
minute
back
because
to
we're
that
almost done
question.
talking about it. Complex but not hard to follow. True. Yeah, I would say that like it's layered and it's rich, but it's a very simple story, all things considered. That you can dig into it, but at its core, it's a tragedy about you know a son who is like a loose cannon and a danger, and like how long it takes the family and society around them to like fully realize just how much of a danger he is, and like facing the consequences of that and looking into like how someone like that is made and sculpted, you know?
Yeah, the generational differences, two generations wrestling with one another. There's like the idea of what it means to be an American at the time where the frontier is closing. I mean, that's
Mhm.
something that's pretty timeless as well. Like what is the what does the American dream look like, for the next wave of Americans. There's so much great stuff in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like someone
Matthew
said,
Leach with another
great
super
find.
chat. Thank you very much. Says Fackham Hall actually looks funny. You guys see it? No, I saw a trailer for it. It looked very silly.
Is it
I
like a Downton
kind of
Abbey parody?
yeah, and I'm like, you know what? That could be funny. I'm a little worried that all the funniest bits are just in the trailer. I don't know. I wasn't quite sure based on the trailer, but it could be funny. I would love to see a good comedy in the theaters again. We don't get too many of those, so that would be nice. Um, After the first half, I thought Ed would kill Lee, and the end would be about Davies stepping up. That's another way it could have gone for
Yeah,
sure, and that would be interesting. I I like it most as like the dad finally having to come to terms face to face with his son, because that final argument between them where he's like, if you think that's all I was, then you had the wrong man as a father. Like that's the movie right there.
yeah,
And like that is basically the final argument, the final conflict, in words. I think that makes a lot of sense. So like there's a lot of ways you could take it. Like this is one of those stories where like honestly I am curious about like Davy and his dad after this. You know what I mean? Not that I ever really want a sequel, but I like these characters. They just feel so vivid and well realized that I'm genuinely like, oh, what happens to them afterwards? You know what I mean? Like you could make a really interesting movie. Oh, yeah. Okay. So you could make a really interesting movie essentially about the opposite problem once Davy is a father, right? Like you
yeah,
could, you know what I mean? Like you could, if this is like a movie about, you know, a man like raising two sons, as the sort of the frontier is becoming more civilized and like, without the influence of their mother, like the two sons kind of go to these extremes of what it means to be a man, right? Like you could do the flip. You could do like what the son has the opposite problem essentially with Davy. And I'd be genuinely interested in that because I like these characters a lot. I think they're really interesting. There's a lot of potential there. I would never want to see a remake of this movie because I think it's great. There's nothing to change. There's nothing to improve upon. It looks great. The music is great. All the performances are really solid. The writing, as we've talked about, I think is particularly strong. And so this is like the kind of movie where like maybe you could do a similar story in a new setting, do the classic approach of like taking a Western and making it a samurai movie or vice versa. But yeah, I think more people should see this movie. More people should know about it. I think it's pretty neato.
yeah, absolutely. I think you could make a compelling, spiritual successor to it as well. Like if you decided
That's
to,
true.
you know,
Absolutely.
it'd be, yeah,
Yeah. Because I mean, it's kind of a timeless theme. Obviously, the specifics of the frontier and stuff like that, but there's always a sort of running theme running through any civilization. It's like what it means to be a man in like the next generation. Are they losing like important aspects of what it means to be a man? Are they going soft, or are those values outdated? That applies to like literally every time in human history. So there's a real timelessness to the movie as well, I would say. While there's a timelessness to the themes while being very much grounded in the specifics of a place and a time in a way that makes it incredibly meaningful in both respects. So yeah, there's a lot to like about this movie.
absolutely.
Yeah. Gunman's Walk is a criminally underrated Western. You should go watch it right now.
Yeah, I
That's
I
the
can't
theme.
recommend.
That's the lesson.
We might have just talked about it for more than double the length of the movie. That's another really impressive thing about this script, right? Is that it's an hour and 30, and it
Yeah, it's
accomplishes
really
all of this in a really just like tight, watchable, entertaining kind of time, and
yeah, it
it doesn't
moves right
waste a
along.
second. It's
No.
really good.
Sam Peckinpah's who everyone heads to check out if you love this. I really liked this, but IMO, he was the absolute master of dealing with the Western and changing. Yeah, those are you've mentioned
Definitely,
some
yeah,
of his movies before, and those are on the list. We want to do more Westerns going into the future. That's absolutely just more old movies in general because there's not really a lot out right now that even interests me, except for maybe Frankenstein. We got to watch that and talk about
Yeah,
that.
we're gonna have
And
to.
then there's continuing the Disney arc, which of course I have been thoroughly enjoying doing, and we're finally getting into some of the stuff that I've never seen before. So we are definitely going to stream next Sunday. That is
Yes.
the plan. Do we want to?
I don't know. I don't have anything that I can lock in on this one right now, but we will make an announcement.
Well, will you have time to do the Disney one, or no?
Let me figure it out. Let me see
Okay,
what
well
I can
then
do.
we don't have anything now. I thought maybe we could, but you can blame Hugh.
Yeah, yeah, you
I'll
can
let you
absolutely.
know, guys know on Twitter what we'll be talking about next week. It'll either be the next Disney movie, or maybe it'll be Frankenstein since that's out, and we'll figure something out. But this, I hope you enjoyed this one, a little movie off the beaten path, and we will try to balance things in terms of covering new topical things that people want to hear about, and covering old things that no one's heard of. Try to do a little bit of both and everything in between. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you had a good time, good chat. Thanks for all your fine contributions to the conversation in the chat. We certainly appreciate it. Isn't it nice that you guys are on screen again? Yeah, we
Yeah,
figured that out finally.
it only took 2 weeks. We're
Oh yeah.
streamers.
Oh yeah. We're professionals. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next Sunday for whatever we talk about then. Have a great week, and we'll see you then. Bye bye, friends.
Goodbye. Happy Thanksgiving to all you
Oh yeah,
fine
and happy
Americans in the
Thanksgiving to
chat
all our
who
American
celebrate.
friends. Give thanks for your families and eat good food and all that sort of stuff. I am going to try to make Indian pudding for my
Oh, no
Thanksgiving this
way.
year.
For real? Yeah,
Yeah.
we just found out about that recently, actually.
Did you watch a YouTube video
No, no, no.
from?
We stumbled on it on like an Instagram reel or something like that. Yeah, this is somebody. It might have been. Was it Tasting History? Is that the one?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the
Okay.
one.
Yeah. We stumbled on his Instagram reel for Indian pudding. Yeah,
I like his videos. They're pretty
he's
interesting,
great. Yeah.
and so
We
I'm
are
gonna
gonna
try to
try
do that.
his pecan pie recipe that does not involve high fructose corn syrup, and the at some point the pumpian pie, not pumpkin, pumpian
Pumpkin
pie
pie.
from back in the day
Oh,
before
it
pureed
wasn't a
pumpkin was
tasting
invented.
history thing, but I saw something recently. There's a video where someone made like an apple pie entirely out of apples, like the crust too.
Oh
Everything
shit,
is
that's cool.
apples, just 100% apples. It's just apples. It's an apple pie. Oops, all apples edition. That sounds kind of fun too. Sounds like a lot of work. Anyway, enjoy Thanksgiving with your family. And if you aren't American, then enjoy your family. Need some good food anyway.
Yeah, nothing wrong with
Why
that.
not? All
Yeah.
right.
What else
Goodbye,
are you
friends.
doing until
Yeah,
Christmas?
exactly.
You fucking lazy
Exactly.
Europeans. Go on.
Goodbye.